to think beyond just a simple sales contest. You can actually change the shape and direction of your firm for many years to come.
The full scope of what's needed in my psychological income from working for you, plus my
Right.
physical income, what I need to survive.
Hmm.
That's the whole package. And I believe sales leadership needs to be purposeful about that.
If you're not purposeful in recognizing people, what we talked about,
Mhm.
the emotional side, the brand, the culture
Right.
in your business, you are likely to lose them.
Yeah.
At some point, money doesn't mean anything. Hello, everyone. We are here to talk about sales contests. And this is a mini course we put together. I'm John Fox. This is my friend and colleague, Brant Dolan. Brant and I have worked together on sales contests and sales incentives for probably, I don't know, more than 20 years. I was actually a
That's true.
participant in one of the programs that he put together. I was actually a buyer and he was the seller. And since then, we've been doing lots of
Well,
work
wait, I
together.
was the trusted advisor.
You are the trusted advisor.
I like that term better.
Exactly. Okay. So there's three main components that we want to talk about. One is just the idea of why do you actually want to run a sales contest? And so you may be considering that for your organization. You may be thinking about that as a fundraiser, some way to run a contest. We think about sales contests because it seems to be the most common. And so we want to talk a little bit about strategy, and because we recognize that you may need to sell this concept to your management. So we want to give you a lot of reasons why, some of the strategy behind that. And then we want to talk about, well, why now? Why do you want to run it now versus later? And then the meat and potatoes is really going to be the how. How do you go about doing it? It's a long list of things that you'll want to check off on your list, and I think at the end, you'll make a decision whether or not you want to have a partner like Brant was my partner, a trusted advisor during that time,
Correct.
or if you would like to try to do this on your own and you have staff, or you want to go somewhere in between, have an agency help you on some of the things like the
Mhm.
awards, or you want to try to do some of that internally. So it's really up to you. So let's start off and talk about the why. And so a lot of this conversation is I'm going to be asking Brant questions and he'll be answering those since he's the expert in this space. And as far as bios go, as you know, they'll all be in the notes and you can read all about us. There's no reason we want to spend your time doing that. You can find us on LinkedIn as well and, check us out. So that's enough of an intro. So tell us a little bit about sales contests and why should I even consider something like that?
Sure. And the only thing I'd like our viewers to know is you're talking to two sales guys here.
Right,
I mean, we
exactly.
grew up in the
Right.
world of sales, got into sales management, got into marketing and all that. So we're not pontificating from third base here. We're been there, done that
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a
So,
good point.
and I think that alludes back to the why is that sales managers need to be leaders. Sales managers need to set the culture, they need to set the tone, they need to set the expectations. And the old saying goes, everything revolves around sales. So depending what's going on at the company at any time of year, I'm sure you've all heard of a SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threats. Most sales leaders they're sitting down, they're planning, they're saying, how do we advance the ball? What do we have to look out for? What is our competition doing? I mean, you folks know all that stuff, but the thing that when John and I first started working together, a lot of this too was sales leaders need to be sensitive to the psyche of their sales team.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Good
all
point.
know it's not about the almighty dollar. It's how someone feels about their job, their employer,
Mm-hmm.
their personal growth, if they're advancing. A lot of those things don't have a lot to do with the paycheck. It's
Right.
how do I feel about working here?
Yeah.
Which leads to motivation, which leads to advancement, all those kinds of things. So that's part of the strategy is what are you doing to further engage your sales team other than the almighty paycheck?
So give me a little bit more about just the why. Why should I consider using a sales contest versus any other thing? There's words that I think about, a spiff, for example,
Yeah.
right? And,
Yeah.
you do this and you earn a little bit more cash, or I've got a little thing that I run in a week I give to
Yeah.
my channel partners, which we also want to talk about, is that
Agreed.
I'm not just my own direct sales team. Maybe I have a third party team that is selling for me. They may be independent reps, they could be distributors. They could be just the generic channel partner. And so some of this, I think, has to do with not only motivating my own team, but also people that don't work for me, where a cash incentive may actually be against their rules to take money, right?
Could be
To
considered a bribe if you're working at a channel. And we'll get into this a little later, but it's, cash still has its place, obviously. We
right.
all need to pay the bills,
Mm-hmm.
get our kids through school, all those kinds of things. But back to what I said earlier, if let's just take working with a direct sales team, for example,
Right.
a lot of that is back to the psyche of the salesperson, what makes them tick. And let's give a sports analogy. Athletes today make a ton of dough,
Mm-hmm.
but they still have the Super Bowl ring. They still have the Masters jacket for
It's
winning the
really true.
Masters.
Right.
All these things are, items and memories that are built and instilled from creating some great achievement,
Right.
which we know in today's world in a paycheck, we don't carry cash with us anymore. It goes to direct deposit. And 2 weeks later, you say, where did that money go? If it wasn't a spiff,
Right.
it probably went to pay bills. So that's not really helping my psyche too much. That's what I expect to do from working for my employer. I expect to get paid.
Right.
The recognition part of the sales contest is
Right.
where the driver comes in, where the motivation comes in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's one reason. Again, back to the sales leadership setting the expectations. And actually, I use a cliche like giving the sales team the arena to perform,
Mm-hmm.
just like a sports guy.
Right.
I need to be out there. I need to be on the field. I don't get that sitting in the locker room.
That's true.
So if you put me in an environment where I feel like I've got an end goal, I am maybe competing with my other friendly salespeople or in a channel, another channel partner, that kind of thing.
Right.
When I start to see myself and maybe there's a leaderboard or there's some
Mm-hmm.
measurement or scoring,
Mm-hmm.
that adds to the motivation as
Mm-hmm.
well. Again, don't get that with a paycheck.
Right.
So.
You talked about competition. What do you mean by that? What are my competitors doing?
Well, competition could be direct sales force. If you, let's say you're with a pharmaceutical company or some other employer,
Mm-hmm.
it's what is the competition doing, either in their channel or with their sales team. And let's divert to a channel. Many times in channel, depending on the product might somewhat be a commodity. And what separates the pack?
Mm-hmm.
We also know the old cliche relationship building is everything in sales.
Right.
And I've been involved with sales contests, if you will, sales incentive programs, that the key ingredient is really like, hey, we want to get out there with our customers, our channel sales partners, dealers, distributors, whatever. And we want to get to know these guys, gals,
Right.
whatever, play around the golf, have a dinner with them, have a dinner with their spouse, whatever. That's the glue that brings it together and takes the commodity and uncommoditizes it, if that's even a word.
Right.
But that's where, so after you're at an event, or even if it's not an event, someone's climbed the ladder and they get to a special notch. Perhaps sales management calls that person and says, "Hey, John, we just saw the results for this month. Great job, dynamite. You actually exceeded your sales by 18% from last month."
Right.
Well, that tells that partner, that sales guy, hey, they're looking, they care about me. They were kind enough to pick up the phone and call me.
Right.
I work with this other entity. I hear from them once a year, and it's usually because of a collection that's due or something.
Right.
So a lot of this is back to people, and that drives your emotions, and
Right.
that's what keeps, especially a channel partner, from going to a competitor.
Mm.
And I've also seen in direct sales where some people make a lot of money and they're trying to be courted by the competition.
Oh yeah.
And then when they get in there and they kind of, if they're asking the right questions on their interview, they might sense that culture isn't anything like the culture where they're at now.
Right.
And is it really worth it to take the risk to jump ship
Right.
from something that you like and you enjoy and you feel you're growing and you're being recognized and you're advancing,
Mm-hmm.
versus go over here for just a few more dollars and then that world's doesn't even exist there.
Right.
So it's also a package type approach
Mm-hmm.
that keeps your current salespeople on board.
Right.
And we all know if you lose your top producer, That's tough recovery time.
Yeah, could be years.
It could be years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me think about a one of the podcasts that I did with David about what happens when your top salesperson leaves.
Yeah.
And do you have just some kind of enforcement about whether or not they can take their book of business with them?
Agreed.
Right. And
That's,
do you even have a copy of their emails and their notes inside of Salesforce or whatever? And I've seen this terrible discipline that gets broken all the time that
right.
the sales management has absolutely no clue, and they wonder why there's this person leaves and all the business goes away.
Yeah.
Right? They've done nothing to enforce that. That's
Well,
another subject, but
but I mean, if you look at, if I'm a sales leader and I consider myself a coach, a mentor, a leader,
right,
again, using a sports analogy, that leader, that coach wants to make sure that they feel that they have a direct connection to each player,
right,
because every player is different. There's variables.
hmm
And if that connectivity is there through these other emotional touches, sales incentive programs or whatever, that the full scope of what's needed in my psychological income from working for you, plus my
right,
physical income, what I need to survive,
hmm
that's the whole package. And I believe sales leadership needs to be purposeful about that,
right,
because it's such an important ingredient.
right,
Because to be honest with you, if I'm a sales manager, I don't want to lose my top guy
hmm
or any of my people. Or the other people, let's not forget in this conversation, are the support people. Sales is, in some instances, it's a standalone. You're out there by
right,
yourself. In a
hmm
lot of B2B
good point,
sales, it's a team effort.
right,
So you've got your sales leader, your account manager, your customer service team. We've seen more that all those people need to be involved in this process. Although we call it sales contest, there's a lot of people that contribute to the sales effort
right,
and win business.
yeah.
So we can't forget them in these endeavors as well.
Yeah, that's important. I think about your top 10 list of that we'll make available as a download, your top 10 list of why. And I was hoping you could run through those. The first is sales leadership needs to create the arena to
I
perform.
think we addressed that.
Okay,
You need to get on the playing field.
right.
Right.
And then leadership needs to continuously inspire. What do you mean by inspire?
Again, any manager, not only sales, I think one of the core criteria of being a manager is you need to be the inspiration to the team.
Right.
And that's part of your job description.
Yeah.
And if you just let salespeople, employees wander and you don't come up with things to inspire them, encourage them, that all adds to the glue and the culture of why people stick.
Yeah. I think about one thing that you and I talk about a lot, and that is having a sales process that your sales team is all on the same page, right? And we've seen this over and over again, that especially small companies are so happy when they find a couple of salespeople that can sell for them, which is great, but they end up being independent operators almost. And in fact, they're almost like mercenaries. Some of them pay them 100% commission. And so they literally don't have the glue to the organization. They're like, well, when I show up and I sell, you pay me, and if I don't show up and I don't make, you don't pay me anything. And you create this sort of mercenary attitude. And I think about how important it is to have a process that you want people to follow. And so when I think about inspiring, there's some bit of inspiration I think that's important
Mhm.
in helping people understand that there is a process, and it could be kind of a fun thing to discover what the process
Well,
is,
you
right?
hit the nail on the head. I think both of us, with past employers, maybe it was our lack of not asking the right questions on the interview, but you show up and you say, I can't believe they don't have this.
Right, exactly.
Why is this
Right,
not here? Or where is this memorialized?
right,
Or I'm starting at ground zero. I thought I'd be at third base by now.
right,
Uh, Often when you design the sales contest, sales incentive program, we'll get into that at the moment, you can, if there is a need and there's
right.
a gap that sales management sees that, we're just terrible at this stuff.
Yeah,
Talk about collaboration from your team to get
right.
that process down,
Yep,
because process is a fundamental. It's blocking and tackling. It might be boring. It's not fun stuff, but that's where within the confines of a program, in a holistic mode, you can get everybody involved. I mean,
right,
there could be an account manager, a customer service person, whoever, an assistant that says, well, what if we were to do this or add this to our process? Would
Right.
that make this outcome better?
That would be great.
And bingo, yes, it would. And bingo, sales manager should recognize,
Mm-hmm.
Karen or whoever for doing that. Thank you so much. Didn't think of that. You're on the front line. I'm not. We're going to now put that step into our process.
Yeah. And that makes me think about inspiration. Last night, Brant took me to couple flag football games with his grandkids, which was just a total blast here in Thousand Oaks. And the thing that I noticed is the coaches, as I saw afterwards, and there were, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 games going on at the same time. And some coaches, after the game was over, they'd huddle their guys together, and a couple of them were doing cheers, and I was thinking, what inspiration that was giving to those young boys and girls of what it's like to compete on a team, and calling them out, and really making them feel a part of something. And I think about, if you're trying to accomplish something as a sales manager, that inspiration is really important, because in many ways you're asking people to do things that are not directly related to the bottom line. They're not contributing to their own success. You're asking for team involvement. And especially when you're paying people just on straight commission, as I mentioned earlier, getting them to buy in really takes an inspirational leader, I think.
I use the word purposeful. Be in the moment. And we don't want to dwell on this, but you didn't see this last night. So the night before, we had a practice, and we were trying to tell these kids, hey, in flag football, it's tough. You got to grab that flag. So we were showing the kid, this one young guy, how to box out the other guy on the sideline to make him turn in.
Okay.
And rather than, because some of those kids, they get the sideline, they're down.
Right.
They're fast.
Right.
And last night, we were so happy it actually happened. That he ran and he stopped and made the runner go in. The other guy pulled a flag right away. And then when we had a timeout, I went out to him. I said, Jake, I said, you made that play. And he's going, like, what do you mean I made a play? Like, he made the tackle. I said, no, he made the tackle, but you made the play because you turned the guy inside.
Right.
That was purposeful. That was thoughtful. That was, he didn't realize his contribution to the play.
Right. He made an assist.
He made an assist. He had learned that skill the night before. Maybe a little bit was intuitive, a little bit was skill.
Right.
But I was purposeful on recognizing him right then and there. And I know his parents saw me out there talking to him, going like this, and they were like, oh, wow, look, he must have done something
Exactly.
great. So it had a residual effect. But
I love that.
I only bring that up because as sales leaders, and we know in this land of hybrid work and work, you're not always close by your sales team. But that doesn't mean if you are made privy to something, you can still send an email, you can still pick up the phone in this day and age.
Right.
And those little touches along the way add to the big picture.
Yeah.
Real important. Don't forget it.
Yeah. I think this is probably a little bit of an apocryphal story, but a friend of mine shared this with me, and he said it was the gospel truth. So I'm okay for that. And this happened at a company called 3Com. It was a big communications firm back in the day. And the president of the firm, and forgive me that I don't know his name, but he was someone important. And he wanted to recognize an employee who had just done something really important. And he had nothing available other than his sack lunch. And the only thing that was left in his sack lunch was a banana. And so he gave this employee a banana, and he said, I want to recognize you, and this is all I got, right? Well, the golden banana became as I understand it, it became something that was,
kind of the moniker,
it became part of the company culture. And I think about things like that you don't really have to do a lot to recognize somebody. An email is great. I'm big on personal notes. I still send personal notes. And greeting cards and all those kind of very simple things, but it just takes a little bit of discipline.
Well, and when we talk to clients too, it's a balance. I mean, if you recognize, that's great.
Yeah.
But after a while, the person may say, yeah, but
enough is enough.
Where's the dough?
Yeah, exactly.
Or where's the trip? Or thanks
right.
for the pats on the back, but is that all there is?
Yeah.
Again, being purposeful, striking a balance. And the great part about sales contests and sales programs they help you strike that balance.
Right.
And because they're set in, it's a discipline to sales management that's now a rail they have to run on. So it
Right.
helps keep sales management accountable too,
Yeah.
rather than kind of working on the fly,
Right.
because there's going to be some uh, what do I say, cycle of measurements going on,
Right.
like weekly, monthly, or whatever,
Hmm.
that then are going to ting to the sales manager, say, oh yeah, it's the end of the month, we're going to get the standing reports, and everybody who's X% above their goal gets X more points towards the end goal of the trip or something.
Right. Right.
So that's the nice part about, you don't get that with the cash only program.
That's true. Yeah, we'll get into the how in a little bit.
Right.
I love that. So recognition, it's in our DNA. That's number 3. I think we talked about that. Money is calculated logic. Rewards evoke emotion.
I think we kind of got that across in the part about rewards, recognition. There's a physicality to it. If I'm in a sales incentive program and I win a 50-inch flat screen TV, or I get a new grill or a new set of golf clubs, or the play stuff, the backyard pool for the kids, it starts to, that does more than the paycheck, because there's a physicality, like the box arrives at the house, and
That's
the,
true.
and the kids say, what's in that? And mom says, well, dad won that in the sales contest, he's going to set it up for you on Saturday.
Right.
You don't get that with a paycheck.
Yeah. That's
So
very true. Yeah, I just think about me growing up, and my dad was in sales, and um, I remember him coming home from golf outings, and he had won
there you go.
something, right? And I remember he, I'll date myself here. He won a small black and white, maybe it was like a 10-inch black and
Right.
white TV, and it was a big deal. The funny thing is that even to this day, I still remember that he won that as a part
There you
of
go.
his golf thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea how much he actually made as far as salary and commission and all that kind of
Good
stuff.
point.
But I really remember these little trophies that he had won along the way, and one of those was a little black and white TV.
Well, not to digress, but what actually got me into the business as I moved along, I started out at a college in door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
And I think the second month I was on this job, I was salesman of the month.
Wow.
And I got a little token, like cup, and like a trophy cup kind of thing. So that was
Nice.
like pat on the back, job well done.
Yeah.
After that, that job was a stepping stone to my next position, because my employer said, well, you can knock on doors, you can do this job too. It was more in industrial B2B sales. And, I, like anybody, I had to learn. But I think the third year on the job, I came in the top 10 salespeople in the country, over 200. And I got a letter from the president of the company,
That's
which was
awesome.
a parent pharmaceutical company, in Omaha steaks, like, in the mail.
Right.
And again, it's like the steaks arrive, we open them up, the kids are going, what's that? Back to like,
Yeah, I love that.
back to your
Right.
dad's story. And later maybe
Right.
we'll cover how I got to experience as a sales guy,
Right.
when the President Club type of trip, and getting to go to an island and all that when you're
Very
a young guy. Yeah,
very
that's a
nice.
whole nother story. But
Yeah.
yeah, the physicality, it's a tangible evidence of a job well done.
Yeah. In fact, that's number 5, allows for visibility and promotability of a job well done.
Right.
Yeah. Number 6 is brand connection and loyalty.
Back to, many of you are involved in a channel, and brand connection and brand loyalty, it doesn't matter if you are with a direct team, channel and sales, or whatever, that brand, the culture of the brand, and if I'm an employee or a 1099 guy, my loyalty to the brand, these connecting points of a sales incentive program, other than the paycheck, they're little shots that keep in the glue there.
Right.
And again, back to, I'm in the channel, you call me because I had a great month. I'm going, hey, it was nice of John to pick up the phone and call me. Who does
Right.
that in this day and age?
Yeah.
Or we have a little quarterly program where we're all going to go golfing for one afternoon. If the top 5 guys in the region hit a certain goal, we all go out someday and play golf or pickleball or whatever.
Yeah.
That keeps me in tune with you and keeps me loyal to the
Yeah.
company.
And you probably get into some of this about like number 7, you talk about creating some friendly competition. And of course, I think about the unintended consequences of getting your top people together, because the thing that binds them together is the work that they do. So it's unlikely that their whole conversation is just about golf. They're going to start talking about, hey, I've got this one sales opportunity coming my way. What's
Yes.
your advice, right?
Hmm.
I'm now getting the advice of people that are my peers
Peers.
that
Yeah.
are the top
Yeah.
performers. And so if I'm not in that group or I fall out of that group one
Yeah.
quarter, I'm going to get back into that group. It has little to do with the recognition. It's more about me learning from other people and being in
It's
that really
back
good
to
group.
brand loyalty. I like hanging out with these guys. My
Right.
other supplier doesn't do that. You
Yeah.
know, I get my check the end of the month for my commission, and that's it. So that's an excellent point about the recognition, the contest, the program. Again, rails you run on,
Right.
glue that has everybody come together, variable benefits that shoot off that main rail
Right.
that aren't really the intention or the main objective of the program, but it's
Right.
a nice byproduct of the program.
Yeah. It's really sweet. Number 8 is don't mess with the comp plan. I love that.
Usually in most companies, the comp plan is set for probably a year. I mean, if you're a channel, it's straight commission or whatever, but
Right.
it, companies, to pat them on the back, they usually go through a lot of work to develop a comp plan. Maybe it's in-house, third party, or whatever. So that's like, for most, cast in stone unless there's a change in the marketplace that they need
Right.
to shift their comp plan.
Mhm.
And we all know to try to go in and get the comp plan changed, that there could be legal issues behind it. It makes people's heads hurt. Now, if it's a bad comp plan, it should be paid. But
Right.
let's just say hypothetically, the comp plan is a solid B,
Right.
right? However, when you get into sales incentives, sales contest, there's more of a on the spot. I need this now. I need to put some energy behind this certain individual. We are getting whacked out here in the marketplace. I need to stop that somehow.
Right.
So I need to get something on display at these dealers, or I need to do this. And I'm willing to run a contest behind that, or if it's a points type of program. So there's more of a currency of a fluidity that sales leadership can dip into. They're not going to break the bank, so they don't have to go get the mothership to change the whole comp plan.
Right.
And it just allows sales leadership more ways to put an emphasis on what needs to get done and create the urgency to get it done.
Right. Yeah.
And
I
the
love
comp
that.
plans sometimes don't do that.
Yeah. I think that's so true. Then the number 9 and 10. Number 9 is create a team atmosphere, and number 10 is involve the family.
I think we touched on that a little bit, in that the team atmosphere, when you really look at your participant base in any incentive program, you should be as inclusive as you can.
Yeah.
Because our human nature is, and I've seen this fault occur, where some clients think, well, we want to use this to incent our dealers. Well, what about the regional manager that calls on the dealer? Well, he's making enough money, that we're not going to do that. And my first thing is time out, because what's going to happen there 9 out of 10 times, the program's announced, the regional sales manager sitting on the side saying, what am I, chop liver, as they say? It's like, you can't even include me in this thing.
Right.
And right then and there's maybe a little dissension, a little resentment, and you think they're going to go out and be the cheerleader you want them to be for the program? Probably not. So that's kind of, to me, a unintended consequence of not being inclusionary.
Yeah.
Same thing is anyone wrapped around the sales effort, the sales team, they all make a contribution.
Right.
And everybody's important, so try to include as many people as you can.
Yeah.
And back to the family, I think we hit on that a little bit, is that the either the onset or the deliverable could be, hey, did you guys know that mom's in this program and with ABC company, and if she wins it, we're all getting tickets to Disney? It's not inexpensive to get a family to forward to Disney.
Right.
In this day and age, here in California, that is. So that's like, wow, really? And maybe 90 days later, mom's won the prize or whatever, and the family's going to Disney because mom won her little incentive contest.
I love that.
So.
I love that. So you use this term behavioral economics. And of course, I think about the book made to stick, which is really all about behavioral economics. And I know you're probably not going
Yeah.
to talk about that, but I just wanted to throw that out. So we recognize that there's a lot more going on here. And I think we, at least people on the outside, look at sales as sort of a different entity altogether, right? These are just the sales team and they behave differently. They don't operate inside the four walls. At least a lot of them are out. People that we're used to dealing with are out meeting customers face to face, and they spend as little time as possible with the rest of the company because that's their, that's their job, is to be
Right.
out in front. And so I think about behavioral economics. What's your intention? Why did you mention that?
Well, there's a couple of terms. I mean, if you went back in my career, coming up through the ranks as a sales guy to sales management, if you would
Right.
ask me 20 years ago, what's behavioral science, behavioral economics, or neuroscience, I'd be going, yeah, I didn't really study that much. And
Exactly. Didn't
wasn't
probably
my,
have that
wasn't my
term,
hot
right?
spot in the high school class.
Right, right.
But then I learned, again, back to what I said earlier in the conversation, I would encourage any leader to read up more or learn more about behavioral sciences,
Mm,
behavioral economics, if you will, because it's the psychology of how we act, how we think, and
mm,
and to be sensitive, to that.
right.
And actually, in our programs that we design, we all know, and these terms you probably know, there's motivation comes in two forms: extrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation. And I, to be candid, I would say most contests have an outcome of do this, get that. That's extrinsic.
Right.
But there's things that I, as a human being, might be more intrinsic to me and things I like to do. And if I'm encouraged to do them, I might even put the pedal to the metal and do them more.
Right.
So, for instance, I think guys like you and I, we're curious. We always like to uncover new things.
Right.
Or maybe we like to, it's just in our DNA to help somebody or mentor somebody.
Hmm.
Now, that's more intrinsic. That's me, how I operate. Now, that being applicable to me, if sales management understands that about me, they can accelerate that effort, recognize that effort by putting points or something against that effort
Right.
in a sales contest. So, for anyone here who, we have this new thing going on, and if you'd like to mentor a salesperson or a dealer, we would surely appreciate that. And just as a token of appreciation for doing that, we're going to give you X points a month for doing that,
Hmm.
and a big thank you as well.
Right.
So then that's not too much to do this to get that, win the trip.
Right.
That's like use your talents, your skills, what's in your DNA, so we can take your talent and apply it to the right application, so to
Right.
speak,
Right.
and get us to go further through that.
Hmm.
So that's all these things that make our headset work. John and I have had some talks. We're both Chicago people from way back when, and we had that. If you're sports folks, Chicago's had some terrible teams and some great teams.
Yes.
But we remember back in the day of Michael Jordan
Oh,
and
it was
Scottie
amazing.
Pippen and all
Right.
that. You were stealing money to go to the United Center to see these guys.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was a little disruption where Scottie Pippen, who was like, famous, nationally known, but he was feeling that he wasn't getting his due versus Michael Jordan.
Right.
And he was making a lot of money, and they renewed his contract, and he threatened to quit. And they said, "Why would you? We're on our third run for the title. You're playing with Michael Jordan, all these guys." He goes, "I just don't feel respected. I don't feel like they recognize my contribution to the
Right.
team. Here's
Right.
this guy making millions of dollars,
Yeah.
but he was totally ticked and ready to jump ship
Hmm.
because he just didn't feel valued, recognized, and respected."
Right.
Now, shame on the Bulls management for that.
Hmm.
And then there was actually, so we don't want to get on a rabbit trail, but you see, again, that's back to behavioral sciences, all this.
Right.
Then you
Very
get a
true.
leader like Phil Jackson who
Mhm.
came in,
Hmm.
and Phil was a head guy.
Right.
He worked one-on-one with everybody.
Yeah.
He had a different approach, and he was more like, if I can get in the head of the player and get them going and motivate them, they'll take care of the rest.
Right.
I don't want that player going out there with any baggage on them.
Yeah.
Back to inspiration, back to leadership, and let the talent take its course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So-
Right. These are good principles for anyone. They work in your family as well. They
Oh
work
yeah,
individually. They work on just yourself, where you find inspiration. They certainly work in sales, but they also work throughout your company.
absolutely.
So if you're a business owner, these are things that really should
Hmm.
apply to your entire business and how you run yourself and also create a culture for your business. Um, so I think we talked quite a lot about um, the why, so the strategy. Let's talk a little bit about why this and why now.
Well, let's start with the why. Why now? Leadership needs to always be thinking ahead of the curve. Leadership needs to be thinking top down, bottom up. Sometimes leadership isn't in the trenches, so they need the people in the trenches to say, look out, we're starting to not do well over here, or we're losing customers because of XYZ, or I just, on my last sales call, the buyer mentioned DEF and I've never heard of them before. I didn't even know they were in our backyard now.
Right.
So there's all these, I'd say, at least when in my past, I would actually have a monthly format in a process that there was
Right.
10 points of criteria every month you had to cover. And one was tell me where it was literally tell me where we could get hammered.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the title of it.
Right.
And it was amazing the outlet that was gave
Mm-hmm.
the salespeople to come back.
Mm-hmm.
They went a little around in different areas, but it was healthy because they would come back and back to my point. This person used to be known for this in the business, but they're now branching off and they're getting to our segment. Number
Right.
one. Number two, where we can get hammered is our deliverables are not where they need to be. We need to get better at that. There's a gap there. So there's a lot of information coming from the bottom up.
Right.
And with a sales contest, a sales incentive program, those are things the sales leadership has not only their common sense to fix it, but again, to reinforce it, get it out there, maybe give a reward for it. You, the main reason I've seen sales leadership use these programs, it creates churn. It gets an urgency to something.
Right.
Hey, my paycheck, I get the paycheck, I get quarterly bonuses, I get a
Mm-hmm.
year-end bonus. A lot of programs in the sales world are based on base plus a year-end bonus.
Right.
A year is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And where's my giddy up in between? If I'm comfortable and I say, well, I'm making a base and we're comfortable, and maybe I'll get a bump at the end of the year, and maybe I won't. And if everything's just flatline,
Right.
nothing's going to happen with the salesperson. However, if that can be changed up, even though the comp plan's the same way, if I can get in there every month, every quarter, and add a little what I say fuel injector to it,
Right.
and put people in the area of competition and reward them for that bottom up information, that again all
Mm-hmm.
rides on the rails of a sales program.
You said something there that I think is really important because to me, the sales team is the eyes and ears of your organization.
Agreed.
And they are not just your own team, but we talk about your channel partners, your dealers, your distributors. All of those people are out in the marketplace. And if you don't have a method of hearing from them on a regular basis and then
Mm-hmm.
squaring that up against other economic indicators, you're really
Yeah.
missing out on what we call G2, right? The
Mm-hmm.
info that's going on at the ground level. You can read about what's going on at the Wall Street Journal and, Forbes and Fortune and so forth, and they're going to give you some reflection that they see. And that might be really great if you're a Fortune 500 company. But if you're a smaller organization, you compete at a whole different level. And so those economic indicators may not have any value. The ones that you really want to tune into are what your sales team is actually seeing on the ground and what they're hearing.
Right.
And let's not forget that your sales team generally is mixing it up with your competitors too. So there's a lot of salespeople that interact with their competitors,
Yeah.
right? And they
Yeah.
share information.
Yeah.
And so hearing how things are going is something that you ought to recognize. And I think about, and I'll probably come back to this a couple of different times, but when I was with Intel, we were just fat, dumb, happy, arrogant as ever in the very early days that I was there in the 80s, and nothing could really do us wrong until um,
Yeah.
we lost a very big opportunity at a major organization, and that salesperson sent an email, or actually before emails, he sent a telex, I believe, to management and said, "This is what happened and how we lost this order." And that created
Yeah.
hell. And they recognized that they need to do something about it. And we'll talk about the program later, because I think it is a really good example of how fast an organization can move, even though it's the size of the Titanic or some ocean liner, and be able to turn things around. And they used a sales contest in order to do that. But talk a little bit more about how you can enable your sales team to get you more info, more G2, if you have any ideas about that.
Well, one of the staples that I always recommend people put into their sales programs are simple man's language suggestion submissions.
Right.
And sometimes people just need that little extra whatever to get off their duff and think a little bit harder, think smarter.
Right. Right.
And now I might have a reason to do it because the more suggestions I give, I'll feel more valued, or I'm getting brownie points to go towards the big trip or things like that.
Right.
And we all know there's a different set of dynamics when you're working with a direct sales team that you maybe have more control over.
Right.
You can meet with more on a regular basis, those kinds of things, versus an indirect team.
Right.
And sometimes on these indirect or channel sales, I may know John, the principal owner of this contracting business, but John might have 5 foremen that I don't even know. And this way, through the mechanism of a sales incentive program, I can be more inclusionary to say to John, "Hey, in this program, we'd like to get your 4 guys involved. We don't even know who they are, but let's get them registered, enrolled." And then now you got more feet on the street in an exponential manner.
That's true.
And then those guys down there, because they maybe, back to your point, work with other competitors, they can start telling the parent where you're great, where you have a gap,
Yeah.
wherever. And again, if you've never run a sales program, I think a lot of sales leadership just thinks like, okay, I'm benchmarking that again. Why do I need to run a sales incentive program when these guys, if they hit quota or above quota, they're making a boatload of money? All right, fair enough. But look at everything we've been just talking about for the last so many minutes. There's so many other tangents of a sales incentive program that actually engage people to think harder, that can become part of marketing and sales and operations.
Right.
And those are the 3 things that make every business work.
Yeah.
So that's the point about engaging others and getting information from people from the bottom up.
So let's talk about pure comp versus sales incentives, just so we're clear on the differentiation between that.
Well, the other, maybe there's the point too. We use the word sales contest, I think, because that's the common man's language. I mean, if I go back to my learning curve, I used to think of contest, but we all know contest. The pure definition of it is there's a winner and there's losers.
Right. Right. Exactly. Right.
And
unless everyone gets a trophy.
unless everyone gets a trophy mentality. So we switch over on my side of the track to say sales incentive programs. It's much more what I'd say comprehensive.
Right.
Then when you get back into sales comp versus sales incentives, it's back to what I'd say striking the balance of the right mix of each. And there's some folks that I've been around that they think cash is king. Why would we want to do that? And I think that's just the gap in their knowledge based on what they don't know what they don't know. Look at what we just talked about with behavioral sciences, behavioral economics, those kinds of things. And the incentives, if you had a scale or a teeter-totter, I always encourage sales management to think of it like an 80-20 blend, 90-10.
Right.
That it should be heavily based on your compensation. No doubt about it. And let's not change that. Let's not mess with it, as we said earlier.
Right.
But that extra little 10 that may be at the discretion of sales management, that's like the cliche icing on the cake, cherry on top, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's where I get this psychological fuel from working with the company. And again, if that it doesn't need to be exact balance, but I see that cash is over here and maybe the incentives are a little lower, but that 20%, if you don't have it, can have a big gap and a big effect on what you're not going to get from your sales team.
Yeah, and I like that graphic that we talk about and you'll see that on the screen where we talk about recognition and the awards and the financial. It's a rewards and awards, right?
Yeah.
Recognition, awards, and financial rewards.
Hmm.
And I think about that teeter-totter, the balance that's
Right.
really important to keep in mind. And I think a lot of times most of us tend to think just on the financial side because it's so much easier. It's a
Of course.
1099, it's a
Hmm.
check. I write
Yeah.
something, I put it in
Yeah.
my financial program or QuickBooks or whatever you're using to pay people, and
Yeah.
it's set it and forget it.
Well, we'll cover too in a little bit that when sales leadership, if they're convinced that they want to give this a try based on on our conversation,
Yeah.
it's extra work. I mean, I'm a sales leader. The comp plan's in effect. I go out there. I hold people accountable. That's my job. End of story.
Yeah.
I start getting into this endeavor of building out a sales incentive program. There's going to be some think through to this. There's going to be some economics behind it. There's going to be investment behind it. A lot of things we'll cover in a little bit. It's a little bit extra work, and especially if you don't know the steps, which we'll cover, of how to do it, it can
Right.
make your head hurt.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why some organizations have not really gotten into running sales incentive programs. Either
Right.
lack of knowledge or the giddy up's just not there.
Yeah.
What's in it for me or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think the organization is shortchanging themselves by not thinking of this and addressing that 20%. We said you need to address what's in the headset too.
Yeah, in fact, let's talk about the IRF paper that we're making available as a download about the benefits of tangible, non-monetary awards and
Right. Yeah.
incentives.
So it's not just hearsay. The IRF is something called the Incentive Research Foundation, and that's a third-party entity that studies and uh, programs, their outcomes, and the behaviors within programs. And like any research facility, that's what they do. They take a sampling and then they give back reports. The
Right.
nice part about the IRF for any sales leader is it's third party information. So if I'm a sales leader and I know I'm going to be trying to pitch this to upper management, but upper management may have the same bias attitude. Well, we pay these guys a ton. Why would we want to run a sales incentive program?
Right.
That this information that's non-biased can come to the meeting and say, but here's what the research says.
Right.
And we all know that opinions are opinions and data is data and research. It's hard to argue with the research.
Right.
So that at least gives sales management a shot at moving this program to get over the end line and get endorsed to do.
Yeah.
So the Incentive Research Foundation, I think it's irf.org.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a ton of stuff on there.
Yeah, they're tied in with Northwestern, I think, right, or something.
They used to
like that?
be, but no longer. Their own entity, I
Totally
think, out
own
of St. Louis
entity.
now.
Okay. All right. Good. Let's talk about, you use the term justifiability. I don't, some of these terms I'm like, are these
Yeah.
actually in the dictionary? These are
Well,
sort of like Brantisms.
Yogiisms. No, I can't take credit for that. Again, back to our human psyche. When we have money in the bank, our headsets and our logic is I've got to live, support my family, pay the bills, college, orthodontist, whatever it might be. And that's where my psyche goes. However, if I'm in an incentive program and I have to redeem my points for a new set of golf clubs, well, then that's the only thing I can do. So it
Right.
justifies me using that currency that particular way to get that. And it kind of reduces any guilt that if I were to go into my own little pocket of money
That's a
and go
good
out and
point.
spend $900 for the golf clubs, which may create some consternation on the home front.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
do I really want to do that? But over here, hey, it's on behalf of the company.
I've never thought about
Yeah.
that. That's
So
really great.
It frees me.
Yeah.
And especially, we know in some of these sales incentive programs that involve, some really nice trips. I
Right.
mean, you're talking in the thousands of dollars
Right.
that the value of that trip may be. And again, if I'm going to take $10,000 out of my bank account to go send the family, to Hawaii for 7 nights, 8 days or whatever, a family of 4,
Yeah.
it's not inexpensive these days. However,
Hmm.
if I can do that on behalf of my company by redeeming my points or winning that trip, and a lot of if the trips are designed right, back to the spouse, back to the inclusionary, back to the partner, whatever,
Right.
it's like now
Hmm.
that whole entity can go either pre, post, or during
Right.
because the main component, the person earned it,
Right.
and let's go before and spend some time, or let's stay later. But the airfare and
Yeah.
everything is paid by part of the incentive program.
Yeah, I think about the program that Brant and I actually worked on, the first one that I
Oh
ever
yeah.
had to put together. I was with a franchise organization at the time called Productivity Point. This is back in the day when you actually learned how to use a computer, and actually we had a course on mousing skills, believe it or not, right?
You're dating
And
yourself.
oh yeah, yeah, I'll date myself.
Yeah.
Um, and so we had this as a franchise operation, and at the time I think we had
Hmm.
maybe 30 franchises, and every one of them was an independent operator before they joined our forces. So it was a conversion franchise, and one of the biggest issues we had was in getting these people to change, to fly our flag, if you will, as Steve Del
Yeah.
Carson, the CEO, used to say. So they would pay to have a lot of the benefits of our national marketing,
Hmm.
our national sales program that I ran, but they were reluctant to change their names. They were reluctant to change their
Yeah.
identity and all that kind of stuff. And it was really hurting us. And the biggest issue we had is, I think it was Chrysler, Mercedes-Benz at the time, came to us for a national program, and they raised the flag that some of their employees were going to our franchises across the country, and they didn't look the same. They were taught differently, and they
Yeah.
raised a flag and said, "Hey, you've got to fix this." So I put together this program with Brant,
Right.
and these franchise owners, it really wasn't a sales program. It was about, can we all change our behavior? And we all agreed to do this. In fact, all franchise owners helped put
Hmm.
the program
Yeah.
together and what the rules were going to be. And if everyone did it, and we had ways of measuring whether or not they had some brand consistency,
Hmm.
if everyone did this and did a whole bunch of other things along the way, then we would get to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
And I have a photo of that I've kept all these years. And again, it's one of these funny things because now, yeah, they got to award themselves, and inevitably they paid for the trip themselves through their franchise fees. So there was no kidding around here, right?
Hmm.
And you got to bring a spouse, which was great. But they all got to be with one another,
Together. Back
same
to your point
thing.
earlier.
They all got to
Back to the
share,
glue.
right? They got to
And
share what was working and what
hmm.
wasn't working.
Right.
And they also got to tell us what we were
Yeah.
doing a really bad job doing.
Yeah.
And so we got to hear at, again, the ground level, not what was going on with their customers,
Yeah.
but what it was like to be a franchise. And so I got to go, and I was running national sales and marketing and put the program together, and I made sure I was there
Yay.
so I could
Hey,
hear it.
you were included.
I included.
I know you say it wasn't a sales incentive program in the true sense, but
Right.
I would argue it was an incentive program
That's true.
because there was what was occurring was nothing, and through this program, something occurred and
Right.
encouraged them and inspired them to get the darn signage right.
Yes.
Now, I would also argue that if the processes are right and the signage is right, and there's more apparent, views to the person walking down the hallway and say, "Oh, that entity does this type of training,"
Right.
they may stop in.
Hmm.
They may be intrigued. That eventually leads to a sale. So there's these steps to the
That's true.
sale
Right.
that can be recognized and rewarded in these programs.
Right.
And then back to the outcome of
Mhm.
that program is everything we've been talking about
Right.
before, which if we're just back to the paycheck, same old,
Yeah.
the sponsoring entity does not get the luxury of bringing all that inclusionary and new ideas to the table.
Yeah. Well, like I
It's
said,
the rails.
it was a sales opportunity that we were almost going to miss with Chrysler and Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
And so that was one of the drivers. So we definitely wanted to handle more of those national accounts. And the franchises did too, because when you think
Sure.
about it, if you have one selling entity and they win a major deal and I get to share in that revenue, which is a training outcome or
Right.
could be whatever, right? I mean, national programs like that, where it's a contract that gets delivered across the country, is a is a huge deal. And so, yeah, you want to reward the sales, and the operation side gets business that they
Agreed.
literally
And
just,
again, in the delivery of that, I mean,
yeah,
I did not go on the on the trip, but I think the spouses went,
right.
so they get to know each other and who,
Hmm.
that
Oh,
kind
he
of
was
stuff
huge,
and all
right?
that glue, and maybe
Yeah,
the owners are meeting one day and the spouses do something else, or there's group dine arounds you do. It's
right,
all those dynamics add up to the again, back to what we said earlier,
right,
the brand, the culture, the likability, who I'm hanging out with, who I'm learning from,
right.
more than just a paycheck, that might have kept them more in with your
Mhm.
organization and computer learning and training than the ABC competitor you had.
That's really true.
And
Right.
here you still talk about that trip that was like a decade, 2 decades
Yeah, it
ago,
was a long
whatever.
time ago.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. It
so
was fun just to dig that picture up, and it's like, oh, I was
yeah.
much younger then. Okay. So we talk about a couple of things that maybe we've covered here. Um, we talk about the dream factor, the
Hmm.
right brain, the left
Yeah.
brain, and then the social factor. I don't know if there's any more that you want to add into that, where we talk about
The only thing
creates an
I'll bring up on the
accomplishment and so
social
forth.
factor probably doesn't need to go without saying. Again, when you look at the typical DNA of a salesperson
Right.
and people in sales,
Hmm.
they're more extroverts than introverts.
Right.
They're more social type people. Doesn't
Hmm.
mean that introverts don't have their place in sales. They do.
Right.
I'm just saying that there's certain attributes that are usually aligned, even in assessments to
Hmm.
salespeople.
Hmm.
Do they have the hunger, desire, grit? Can they take rejection? Do they have good people skills and their
Right.
social skills?
Yeah.
And I think we're like this. We're social beings. You take the two of us guys out, and we have to be careful about how much jabbering we can do.
Exactly.
But we
As you're telling right
thrive.
now,
But we
right?
thrive on being in a social
Right.
environment.
Yeah.
And therefore, if I am a salesperson or dealer and I feel like I'm just in a cave by myself all the time,
Right.
I don't feel I'm growing, I'm not learning.
Yeah.
It seems like the company sends me my bonus once a year, and that's about the only time I hear from them.
Mm.
After a while, I'm going to say, is this the place where I should be hanging out?
Right.
So all these things come
Yeah.
into the big picture.
Yeah. And I think about the challenge that management has today with a workforce that talks a lot about work-life balance.
Sure.
And I know this just from my own children that have a very different perspective on work. And work is just something that fits into their life. It's not something they build their life around.
Yeah.
And I think it's challenging for people that are a little bit older. And now you're a manager, and you like, these people get motivated by very different things.
Agreed.
And the fact is, they are still motivated by the same things, but in how we communicate to that is very important. And so some of these non monetary incentive programs are super important to them because they do want to go on trips and they do enjoy getting away. And destinations are important, and
Yeah.
events and doing things as a group, super important, and probably more
Yeah.
important to this younger generation than to
Well,
us.
it's been documented through research studies since hybrid work is now more commonplace that the younger generations are working from home and
Hmm.
they don't have the social outlet of going into the office and
Right,
talking about the football game on Monday from the weekend results and all those good things. So
right.
the more these programs bring people together,
Hmm.
it could be even Zoom meetings, but it's just, again, the thing that
Right,
uh, I really like and I'm passionate about the business is when I'm running an incentive program or an engagement program, whatever you like to call it, for an employee base or a sales team,
hmm,
it's now I've got to be purposeful. It
right,
keeps me accountable. The rails are set. There's going to be benchmarks in time, a calendar put against this. I
right,
am now responsible for further leading and inspiring, and it keeps me on track. And even if it's a Zoom meeting once a quarter to talk about something, or we're all going to come into the home office or whatever
right,
every 6 months, again, back to culture, back to ebbing and flowing, back to the right balance.
right.
It's the cliche in the business, it's the total reward system.
Yeah,
It's not just cash, it's not just incentives. it's the right blend of everything
Yeah.
to make me grow and learn as a person and feel good as to who I'm working with.
Yeah. So again, it's just like life. If you overcompensate in one area, something else
Right.
is going to get left
Yeah.
off. And so balance is very, very important. We all know that. But in bringing that to the sales team in particular is to your own benefit as the business owner. So let's talk a little about we have um, I think we're going to start getting into the how, and we talk about points and how you earn points. And
Well, we're all consumers.
Mhm.
And I think most of us is safe to say that we're on some type of point system right now through a hotelier, an airline. We get miles or we get Hilton hotel points or whatever. So
Mhm.
it's not strange to us to be earning points as a consumer.
Right.
And that helps keep us loyal. We might book this Hampton versus something else because I'm on the Hampton Inns program or something like that. Uh, what's happened in the incentive environment is, again, points tend to be an easy metric to accumulate, assimilate, and work with. And then points go against certain indicators that are achieved. They have to all be pre-thought. And again, points become a currency of value that I can use as the sales leader versus the dollar. Right. Now, we can make the points worth whatever you want them to be
Sure.
worth. But now, again, back to my human psyche,
Mhm.
I know a dollar's worth a dollar. I may not know what 100 or 1,000 points are worth over here, other
Right.
than if I get 10,000 points, I know I can get a grill.
I love that.
Right?
I
And
love
I
that.
might think, okay, let's just say it's a very,
Yeah.
casual Weber grill that you can buy for 90. I might say, okay, that Weber grill 20, it's maybe $100, whatever.
Yeah.
I might have a perceived value, but I may not spot on. No different than I ask this often to people. So, are you in a hotel department? Yes, I am. So, why do you think the hotel is, at X number of points, you get a free room night or you get water when you check in? Or they
Mhm.
go, why don't they just give you that in cash? And they go, yeah, good point. I said, because you'll have an idea of the value of that. And if the points are structured correctly,
Right.
and let's say, if you book 3 nights, you'll have enough points to get one free night.
Yeah.
It takes the economics out of the equation
Right.
and it puts it back to this other currency. You might have an
Mhm.
idea, but
Mhm.
not spot on, but it starts thinking you in chunks of points
Yes.
to
It's
do
really
something
true.
3 times
Right.
to
Right.
get my free hotel night.
Yeah.
Again, that's back to how we think as human beings.
Yeah. And I
I
think
mean,
David's in fact mentioned this, and I don't remember the exact study, but it was something about what would you rather have, a Hershey's bar or a dollar to take
there
some
you
kind of
go.
a test. And
Right. They went with a Hershey
overwhelmingly,
bar.
people are much more happy,
Mm,
even though it's the same
yeah.
value, right? But there's something that
There's
goes on
something
your
in our
brain. I don't
heads.
know what it is. I'm not a shrink to
And
know.
and it's actually been proven through the IRF that if you structure programs correctly,
Hmm.
and let's get back to the salesperson, because they are most cash motivated, and nothing wrong with that.
Right.
My measurement is dollars.
Hmm.
That's my standard measurement. Now you give me points, and I can't quite figure it out, but I know I have to do these 3 chunks or these 2 steps to get there.
Right.
That I can actually spend less in points than the dollar. I could spend 80 cents on the dollar and still get what I want from you at the end of the program. Now I've saved 20%.
Yeah.
And that 20% in the financial savings can help offset the award cost of the program.
Right.
So CFOs, I think, need to understand this as well.
Good point.
And if I can go to CFO, which I've done in the past, and
Hmm.
I've said, hey, John, I'm not going to make a dollar for dollar in this program. Think of a dollar as 75 cents on the dollar. That's what I'm going to be giving them points. And CEO goes, I like that. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good return on our money and our expenditure. And
Yeah.
now I'm not messing with the comp plan either.
Yeah.
I'm augmenting the comp plan.
I love that.
So
Yeah.
it can be a savings.
Yeah, I think again, if you're selling this program to management, one of the most important things you can do is work on, and I think we get into this a little bit later, but maybe now is a good time. We talk about the ROI that needs to be presented to your financial people to justify
Yeah.
running one of these programs. So
When we're working with folks in sales management that have never done this before,
mhm,
let's face it, in the world, everybody's hurried. You're trying to get an idea across. If you go into your key management with a 19-page document, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
They're like, what do you got?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's in an email or what's on 2 pages I can digest here?
Right.
So we said, okay, let's just keep this real simple. Let's go in and have a paragraph about the concept. We call it the concepts, financials, logistics. And let's talk about the concepts, and that's why we want to do this, how it would possibly work. And then the financials would be what it's going to cost to make it work, if it's points, if it's trip, or what a point is going to be worth, and then how we can get this done, the logistics of all this.
Right.
And you can kind of almost do that in 2 pages and a few paragraphs. And back to the ROI. Sometimes in that document you can have an ROI or an estimated ROI, but sometimes return on investment doesn't always mean that it needs to be cash either. Back to, if I can run a program for my sales channel that's going to get me in front of more people and start to create relationships, back to a term that you use, that creates more lifetime value for me and that customer way down the road. So selfishly, I might just be running the program to get the connectivity, the glue, the stickiness with that particular customer. And that's maybe one objective of running the program. Because I'm going to lock you in, and we're golf guys, and we like golfing, or we like going to ball games together, or whatever the application may be. But sometimes that could be short and sweet. You need to tell management why you're doing it, what it's going to cost, and what you expect the outcome to be from it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that CFL, I think is what you said. What is it again? It's
concept, logistics, financials.
Okay.
Right.
All right. And so this is a 2-page document. I assume you could probably go to ChatGPT and actually have it write something like this for you. It's not terribly complicated.
Not terribly. I mean, everybody might have their own style. It's just something that, let's keep it simple, let's keep it short, let's keep it sweet, and something that I can look at in 5 minutes, have a conversation with you and say, hey, thanks for putting on paper.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
See ya. Do it.
And then the ROI, I think the graphic we have on that is, it's a very simple formula of gain divided by the cost equals ROI. But the gain doesn't necessarily have to be.
It doesn't have to be financial.
Right.
I mean, it's always better if you can tie a financial gain to it, a savings or some type of gain. And the key word too, when you run these, I like to put a little adjective, incremental gain. You're in direct sales, as a sales leader, I've always advocated to sales leader, look, the salesperson has some type of goal of attainment. That's their expectation. That's why you're on the job. That's where you get paid. But if I can get a little incremental boost from you by 20%, then that's my incremental gain. From that incremental gain, I'm deriving some type of incremental profit. And depending on that incremental profit, I can take a smidgen of that profit, and now that becomes the funding for my points or whatever.
I love that. Of course, when I think about gain, I'm a fairly new resident to Denver, and I've been doing my first couple of 14ers, which is quite an achievement for me at my age. And
that's walking up hills.
Yeah, walking up hills, right, up to 14,000. And they use that term gain to talk about every one of those steps. And the challenge for me is that every one of those steps is a higher elevation, and there's less oxygen along that way, right? So I think about that in the sense of a sales contest, that as you reach these different levels and points and so forth, there is less oxygen, right? And it requires you to drive even harder to get to those higher levels. And I think a good contest really does force people to achieve more than they otherwise would. It pushes them to achieve more. And then
it's a roadmap and more or less a visual too, because I often tell this story. I've been on some sales outings and maybe we'll go bowling one night. Now, I'm not a great bowler. I mean, I used to bowl. And last time we did this, I don't think I have bowled in 10 years. And I'm like, oh, guys, I got to bowl.
Yeah, I'm waiting to break 100.
I can still break it.
Don't take me.
But here's the analogy. So now you're out there, you got, let's say, team 1 and team 2 to keep it simplistic. in bingo, there's a scoreboard.
I love that.
Like trying to
Yeah,
score.
leaderboard.
It's got Brant, John, Mark, whoever, Billy, Bob, whatever.
Right.
And so after a while, first frame, everything's neutral. But by the third or fourth frame, you start seeing.
Right.
And I'm sitting there saying, oh, crap, I'm like running third of my team here. Nobody said anything to me yet.
Right.
But it's now visual. There's a leaderboard or sense in front of me and whatever. Now let's strip that away, and let's just say I went bowling by myself. I'm the salesperson out in the field. Nobody's watching. Nobody's looking.
Right.
I'm not in this competitive arena.
Yeah.
I'd probably say, I don't get a strike. I don't get a spare. Who cares? It's just me.
Yeah.
But now when I'm in this arena and I'm in competition, my adrenaline starts going.
There you go. Adrenaline.
My attribute of ego and competitiveness starts coming out.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't want to be embarrassed.
Yes, exactly.
I want to show I do it. I'm gonna kick it up a notch. It clicked my psyche into the visual camaraderie, competitiveness of doing this. Same thing happens when you're running sales incentive programs via dealers, salespeople, whatever.
Right.
There's going to be a standing report. There should be, or there's going to be a visual of a leaderboard and how people are doing monthly, weekly, daily, or whatever, and that keeps things going, keeps things fluid, and keeps me. Oh gosh, I don't be the last guy on the list here.
Yeah, and in fact, just before we move on, we were talking about it doesn't have to be a financial incentive. I was thinking about a program that you and I are talking about that we're pitching a company on. And that has to do with just getting good intelligence on what's going on in the field, right? So I know we're stepping back here just for a second, but I just want to emphasize that this doesn't have to only be about getting higher revenue numbers. Again, sales teams out in the field, you can ask them to do other things and then provide an incentive program for them to go out and find that
we'll get
information.
into, again, back to what we said earlier, the SWOT analysis. Any leader needs to be saying, what are we good at? What are we bad at? What do I need to improve? What's coming down the pike? Where can I be opportunistic?
Yeah.
So even if that's the framework for the rails of your incentive program, there's other areas of indicators you can put an emphasis on. For instance, in some industries, there might be a certification process.
Right.
And a lot of guys,
Yeah, good
I
point.
get it, I don't get it.
Right.
Well, hey, John, we're running this program, and i.e., we noticed you've been with us for 3 years now, you don't have your certification. So one of the goals we're putting in this program for you, John, is if over the next 6 months you go through the training and you get your certification, we would like to recognize that and reward you with A, B, C, D, E, F.
Right.
And you might say, now I'm going to use my discretionary effort that was latent over here. I'm going to put a little pedal to the metal and try to get my certification. Not only because I have a reason to do it, but management is kind of looking at me to do it too.
Right.
So there's this expectation, and leadership has to set expectations.
Yeah.
Whether it's direct or indirect or whatever. So we'll get into, it's more than just the top line when you're running, or maybe bottom line profit.
Yeah.
A lot of other variables can come in to help move the incentive program along and get outcomes you want from the incentive program.
Yeah, I'm reminded of something. I don't know if Microsoft does this anymore, but when you earn different certifications, there's an emblem or a little shield that you get that says you've accomplished a certain level. You were software certified or network certified and so forth. And they would pay you to get your business cards rerun with that emblem on the card, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's face it, printing a box of business cards is probably $40 or $50, right?
Right.
Which is just, for Microsoft, it's not a big deal, right? But to think about doing something like that is really important. And back to the recognition, because now I have special business cards, right?
Agreed.
And when does that come out? Even business cards today, we're all digital, whatever. Okay, get it. But when you're out meeting someone, especially if you're dating and you have a business card and you're, you're handing those out, and why is yours different than everybody else on the table here? Oh, well, let me tell you how.
Well, let's go back to not a great analogy, but when you talked about productivity point, and really the main aspect of the program was not sales, but we talked about that step of the signage, and the foot traffic gets me in. I may have gotten a sale I wouldn't have gotten because I didn't have the signage.
Without question.
So same thing. I want you to get your certification, John, because that's a point of difference when you're out making calls.
Right.
And if you're at all thinking as a salesperson, you should say, by the way, do you notice I have a CPM on my card? And they'll go, yeah, I notice it, but I don't know what that means. And then in a nice way, humble, bragging, so to speak. Well, the only reason I put that on there is because that means in my industry, I've been trained and I've been certified to do da 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 da. And what that means to you is you can be assured that this process will work correctly because we've already been down this trail. I am certified to do this. And we found that probably less than 7% of people that may be representing the same service do not have the certification.
Yeah.
Now that's a point of differentiation.
Yeah.
So you can see where the incentive program eventually, if it all connects, can lead to an outcome of a sale down the road because you're different.
Yeah. In fact, the first time I heard the term taking all the oxygen out of the room was related to Microsoft and the certification program.
Oh, I thought it was me.
Yeah, maybe, right. And here's what it explained to me. It was a gentleman at Microsoft by the name of Forrest Ward. And he was telling me about what their program was. And I said, well, I'm not sure I understand the term. And he said, look, John, every person has so many hours a day that they can possibly go get trained. And it's expensive to go get trained. It was thousands of dollars that a company or an individual had to invest to get trained. And once you got certified, you probably weren't going to get certified in the competitor's similar program.
Agreed. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so Microsoft was making it incredibly easy for people to get certified, which took all the oxygen out of the room. So let's say you had 20,000 potential people that could get certified.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
And they literally made it very easy and then recognized those people paying $40 for their business cards. Okay.
Yeah.
That now those people were no longer available to their competitors to be trained and be certified because no one's going to go through a separate program. It's just too difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that is really smart. And I have used that principle in other industries.
Yeah.
Like, how do we take the oxygen out of the room so my competitors, all of the possible candidates that could use that now are no longer available to my competitors because I took that out. And it's literally because I made it easier for people to do it, and I paid for their business cards to be reprinted.
And in many of the platforms that are available now, with these, back to what John said earlier, what you need to decide if you wish to embark upon, I'll say, investigating or exploring this is it something you can do on your own after you learn all these elements, or might you say, I don't really have a points system or platform. Can I shop that in the open marketplace?
Right.
So that's something you need to decide. But the other thing are all these other indicators that you can bring into the program. You can bring them in, you can take them out. It's the flexibility of that. And that's why usually when there's a stop and start, so you can run an incentive program, let's just say for 6 months or a year, and then maybe you take the first quarter off next year. And then you just run it for 90 days because you have an urgent need next year. But at least this tool is in your tool bag as a sales leader to stop, start, emphasize, whatever, whenever you want to do it as a need comes up.
Yeah, I like
because you're probably not going to get the same fluidity by going to the CFO saying, I need more money to run this.
Right.
And back to points, back to a currency, all those things. So that's why once they're in, you usually have to sell it in once and it'll stay. There's stickiness to these things.
I like that. I like that. So that's an important point for all of you to remember that once you go through this and you find, whether again, if you're going to do this internally, you're going to do some coaching outside, you're going to have an agency help you, however you go about doing it. Once you do this once, or maybe even just a pilot, and we'll talk about that in just a bit.
Yeah.
Once you do it, it really starts to become its own, use your term, rails that you run on.
Rails, it becomes a brand like within the company. We'll give it a name or a theme or whatever. And it's, to be candid, there's been many times we've run an incentive program, it's set, it's the platform, and somebody else from the company will say, hey, can we use this for ABC? And we're going like,
of course.
I never thought of that. That wasn't one of the things we were thinking about before.
Yeah.
And within these systems now, you can put LMS, like learning management systems in there. You can put quizzes in there. There's a lot of functionality that add to the end result,
Right.
means to the end type of things. Then the almighty, hit your quota or go above quota and get points.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about safety programs as one of the things that
Sure.
I've seen people do. So they'll start with a sales program and they see how well it works. And then oh, well, wow, this could actually work as a safety program because we need our employees that are doing
Yeah.
some kind of construction or whatever to behave a certain way. So we achieve a TRIR rating,
Agreed. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So super important
Well,
to
and
think
not
about
to
that.
get on a rabbit trail, but
Yeah.
sometimes we see where sales leadership will embark upon investigating the sales incentive program.
Hmm.
Back to your point, other people see what's going on in the sales department and say,
Right.
can we use that over here, the safety guy?
Yeah.
And then HR may say, we only do like a milestone anniversary, but we need to start doing things more on a monthly basis. And can we? The only reason I bring that up is back to our mention of being curious.
Hmm.
Sales leaders can often bring things to the organization that upper management is not thinking about.
Right.
And if you're the guy or gal in your company that embarks upon running this a sales incentive program, and it finds its way to meander over to other pockets of the company, well, in your career, that's going to be an attaboy and attagirl for you too, because you're really you're bringing a great contribution
Right.
to the company that nobody would have fallen off a chair and thought of that if you weren't running the sales incentive program.
Right. Yeah. Good
So,
point.
I mean, I'm not saying that in a mode of greed. I'm just saying that that's being a corporate good citizen.
Right. I agree.
And you don't know where these things can go. It's got to get a start.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Gotta
And
get
when
a
you
start.
think about got to get a start, then I think about what was the number one question that when we ran that cruise, what was the number one question that came back after we ran it? When are we doing it next year? Where are we going?
Yeah.
So that was cool. All right. So we talked about the why and the why now and why this. And so now we want to move into what we call the how. And I think a lot of that is built around your CFL formula, the concepts, logistics, and financials.
Right.
And so, again, I think Brant's done a great job of breaking this down into 10 elements of a program. And so the first one is objectives.
Not profound,
Mm-hmm.
but objectives have to be thought through. And sometimes it's probably dovetails with this. I encourage sales leadership to be the thought leader and start it, but then quickly surround your thoughts and collaborate with other people that are going to probably have a hand in this.
Right.
As the old saying goes, no man is an island. Back to what's going on in the marketplace, why we're running this, where should the emphasis be in a program, what should the priorities be, and I also recommend you can't come out of the gate with 19 objectives.
Right.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you may have, let's say for argument's sake, 10 objectives. Well, maybe you start with 3 or 4 of them, see how that goes, and then you always keep the other 6 in mind and just introduce them at a different time. I'm speaking for myself. I can't remember on a daily basis, you want me to do 7 things and I'm going to get points or whatever for it. A couple, I'm there. And if you want to change it up in 90 days to be a couple more, that's fine too. So the objective needs to be, well defined, what I'd say prioritized, and then we'll get to, where that's going to be included at the end line as well. But don't do it in a vacuum is what I'm saying.
So I'm thinking about the elements of a program. Are you talking about objectives and we get into this? Is this a document that I'm writing that's presented, or is this a PowerPoint? What have you seen to be the most effective? Because it sounds like something that I'm going to write, but then I need to refer back to it throughout the process of running my program.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going into management, I'm going to say, here's the 3 objectives of why I'm running the program.
Right.
Whatever they could be, and we'll get into, there's a host of what they could be and why they could be.
Right.
But that's always back to, can those objectives
Mm-hmm.
be, number one, are they reasonable, attainable?
Right.
Let's not put pie in the sky stuff there.
Yeah.
Number two, can they be measured? Right. And will you have a metric to,
Mm-hmm.
a means to measure it,
Mm-hmm.
so you can show you met your objective at some
Right.
point? Was
Right.
there a gap? Did you go over objective?
Mhm.
Did you go under your objective? Wherever it's at. So
But is this something that's written, or is it just a simple PowerPoint? What have you found to be the best communication medium to bring everybody up to speed to where they can actually make a decision on something like this?
yeah, I usually say put it in a PowerPoint. It's again, the first rung of the ladder is you've got to sell management on, why you want to run this and what you expect the outcome to be, and here's the
Okay.
objective of the programs. Here's what I wish to accomplish by running this.
Okay.
So yeah,
Right.
a PowerPoint's perfectly fine.
Okay.
But all I'm saying is don't go in there with 19 objectives.
Right. Yeah, I like
Nobody's
that.
going to remember that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
Especially.
say, ballpark is 3 to 5, and
Okay.
you're in good shape.
Okay. And audience. What do you mean by that?
Audiences, again, what we've been talking about, try to be as inclusionary as you can, from whoever influences or is part of, again, in a sales environment, makes a contribution. The nice part about these programs, it doesn't need to be a one size fits all. So let's say John is the business development guy. You're going to have your set of objectives, but maybe the support team is pumping out the proposals, and their objective may be to get proposals done within, just pick a number, within 7 days from the request of the salesperson, because we've been running at 10, 12, 2 weeks, and we want to put a little giddy up on that and get it to the guy so he can get in the field a little quicker.
Yeah.
So each participant in the audience of the program can have different objectives, as long as they can be measured,
Okay.
assigned to them. Again, it's not the end goal of total gross sales. It's the steps along the way that you're measuring, calculating, recognizing, and rewarding for.
Yeah. This is really good, because I can imagine that there's somebody out there thinking, look, I get this, but that's really their job. So,
Well, it is their job, but again, we're looking for the incremental gain and the incremental the incremental improvement of this.
Right.
So yes, there's job, but we all know, back to behavioral science,
yeah.
if you want me to do something 2 times and you're willing to pay me X for that, and that's my quota, and we have an agreement, I do this 2 times, you give me X, we're clean.
Right.
But if I do it 4 times, and I do it 4 times 3 months in a row, and there's nothing there for me,
Right.
my human psyche is going to say, if there's no monetary gain, no recognition or whatever, why am I busting my hump doing this? Apparently, they're okay with me just doing this 2 times.
Yeah.
So we, again, back to cash, back to rewards. There's an expectation of what you do in the core program that is expected of you as a sales hire, dealer, whatever.
Yeah.
If I can demonstrate I brought extra to the party, the sponsor is rewarding for the extra, not the expected.
Right.
And that's how the program should be designed.
That's an important component.
That's an important component, because I'm the first to say, we're paying these guys for this. Yes, we are.
Right.
But we really don't have a format. And even though we may pay John for number 2 and 3, after John does that for 3 months, if he's not hearing that we really appreciate, he's got 6 more than what we thought over 3 months, John might be saying, I don't think they really care. Nobody loves me. I didn't get a phone call on this.
Yeah, I'm Scottie Pippen.
Why am I busting
Right.
my hump for these people?
Yep.
Right. So it's all these things have to work in a connected fashion.
Yeah, I think, again, something that we have to remind everyone is that you said no man is an island. Well, guess what? No company is an island either.
That's true.
And your best employees are constantly being hounded by others who would love to have them on their team. Let's just be honest with that. And if you're not purposeful in recognizing people, what we talked about, the emotional side, the brand, the culture in your business, you are likely to lose them.
Yeah.
At some point, money doesn't mean anything.
Well, if you have model A and they're over and above the marketplace in their compensation program,
Right.
and let's just say they're 30% better than anyone else, some guy might be intrigued by that, he jumps ship. But model B is, we're in the hunt in our comp program, but we do this, we do this, we do this, we do that. That it's a more well-rounded approach.
Right.
At the end of a year, if you interview either one of the two people, who's happier?
Yeah.
It's the guy that has that balance. I'm making a decent living. It's a decent comp program. I'm rewarded. I got this trip. I did this. I did that. They've recognized my family. The other guy just goes in the bank, paycheck. Sometimes I wonder if they even know I exist.
Right.
That doesn't help my psyche going to work every day.
Yeah. In fact, it was, I don't remember who told me this years ago, but we were talking about the companies that appeal to your emotions and those that appeal to your pocketbook. And he was trying to make the point that there's many organizations that don't pay their employees anything because guess what? They're nonprofits and they're doing
That's
really
true.
cool things.
Yeah.
These are churches that are doing some cool outreach, let's say, for instance, and they're not paying them anything. And these people are working 80 hours a week for a mission. So you don't necessarily have to pay people to do good work, right?
Correct.
So you have to get out of this mentality that I pay you X and I expect Y, and that's all there is to it. That's a very short-sighted way of running your business, and it'll eventually be your undoing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about the number 3 here is KPIs, and maybe talk about KPIs and rules at the same time. That's number 3 and 4.
Kind of, yeah, kind of, no.
Okay.
KPIs, key performance indicators, that's the steps along the way that need to be achieved to get to the end goal.
Okay.
So if I want, let's just bring it down to second grade. If I want more sales and I'm in a B2B environment, that
Right.
may mean that my people need to have X number of appointments, next under presentations, X number of demos or whatever.
Yeah.
So an indicator might be, we expect our sales team to have an appointment a month. That's in their paycheck. That's in their base. And if you're underperforming, you should be boom,
Right.
gone. Now, this John guy, he's getting 6 appointments a month. Well, that indication of 4 versus 6 is, I think he's going to, metrics, he's going to move along faster, quicker
Right.
than the other guy. And we want John to keep getting 6 appointments a month, maybe even 7, incremental gain. And we're going to pat him on the back. We're going to recognize him, all those things.
Right.
So an indicator gets you to the
I
end
love
goal.
that.
And where, again, the nice part about sales incentive programs are, and maybe back to points as a currency, you can put an investment of points against that indicator. So for instance, John, you're expected 2 or whatever number I said. If you get, or you expect 4. If you get the 5th one, that's X number of points. Right. If you get the 6th one, that's Y number of points. You get the 7th one, that's the big, when you get triple points.
Right.
Right? That's how you build it out.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's a little bit actually of a rule structure and a KPI and points all combined. Back to your point, climbing the ladder, seeing myself go up.
Yeah.
So what sales management needs to be thinking about are, we can rattle off a few, but there's so many indicators in sales. I've used a few: demos, appointments, the number of proposals you're generating.
Right.
There's, if you need to get client wins, client losses. I mean, we have to expect there's going to be attrition.
Right.
In every sales environment. But if you can retard that attrition, that's a Yahoo.
Yeah.
I've seen programs run where an indicator is the more we get better customer satisfaction scores.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe we can monitor that's a sales ploy a salesperson can bring to the sales environment to say, hey, Mr. Buyer, I know one of the things in the unknown here is how we're going to service your account. Let me show you how we've been tracking over the last year with this, because we measure ourselves, and they put that on the screen or in a PowerPoint. Right. So I'll bet you there's, again, and it's back to how the sales management wants to mold the program and put an emphasis on what indicators are needed now or are most important to get us to our end line. And your common sense would say the indicators should be connected to your mission and your goals of where you want people to go.
Right.
It can be an indicator. It's like, gosh, I'm looking at all my channel principal owners, and we've got 62 of them, and only 14 of them are certified. That's terrible. Yeah. So are you going to get the whole shooting match done next year? No, but what if you could get another 30% of those channel principals certified over the
Mhm.
next year. So your objective would be, I want more people,
Right.
I want 30% more dealers certified at the end of the year. An indicator is going to be if they come into a Zoom meeting and want one personal regional meeting, that's an indicator. We're going to reward them for coming to that, all toward the end goal of my outcome being, 30% more principals got certification last year.
I like that.
Right. That's how it all kind of marries together.
Yeah.
Now, the rules, let's get back into the rules. The rules would be, John, here's the program for our certification. One of the rules may be you have to get your butt to a regional meeting,
Right.
or we're going to have 6 Zoom meetings. We expect you to at least be 4 of them. So you start blending the expectations that's engulfed with the KPI as part of the rules. And then there's a lot of other things with rules because we know I think we'll get into this, there could be some manipulation sometimes with salespeople. There can be the term sandbagging, if you know what I mean. Oh, I got to put these few sales over here and not let
Right.
them know what's going
yeah,
on until I
yeah.
catapult into the start of the incentive
Right.
program.
Right.
And the great thing about people in sales who come up through the ranks, like most of us, we usually been there. We know those
Oh yeah.
those deals. Or back to your collaborative team. When you involve people and run the program, they say, we should look out for A, B, C, or D, E, F
Right.
in this program because somebody could snooker us here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, John. Didn't think of
Yeah.
that.
That reminds me of this one guy that I worked with, Tom Madden. Bless his heart. Tom is no longer with us. And Tom knew the way in which management, Frank Gill, and Frank, if you're
Mhm.
watching this, I love you too. But I don't know if you knew you were being manipulated or not. But Frank, on a Friday afternoon, especially it was a Friday afternoon, it was one of those witching Fridays where it was the end of the month
Yeah.
or the end of the quarter and it was the end of the week. All of those things, right?
Mhm.
And Tom would anticipate this. And so this is back when you got a physical purchase order from a customer and he would keep them in a file drawer. He
Okay.
wouldn't enter them.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, and Frank is running down the office asking everyone, hey, get on the phone. We need to get some orders in here.
Yeah.
And Madden would just open up his file drawer and he'd pull these out. And he said, oh, by the way, I've got these.
I got these,
And
yeah.
he was always the hero because he had planned this. So you talk about manipulation. He understood how to play it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, within rules, and we go over this with folks too when we're helping them set up programs, it's like you need to put disclaimers in there.
Mhm.
Who's eligible? That
Right.
could be a rule. It's like playing a board game. Who's eligible? How you
Right.
move the parts? Where you go up the ladder or down the ladder? What counts? What doesn't count? Yeah, you have to be forward thinking on, and you want to make it fair and reasonable,
Right.
obviously. But you also have to be thinking of they'll term unintended consequences and time frames, eligibility, maybe tax implications
Right.
that the company's going to pick up the tax liability or it's going to be the responsibility of the salesperson. That's good communication. Let them know up front.
Right.
You don't want people calling you during the program saying, well, I didn't know that's the way it was supposed to be.
Right.
And we're going to stub our toes and maybe not think of every rule, but all we're trying to instill now is you just can't spray and pray this. I mean, you need to
Right.
think this through,
Yeah.
and you need to have some sounding boards within the company to say, this is what I'm thinking, how this should run. Where did I miss something? Well, you didn't really talk about ABC here. Thanks, didn't think of that one.
Right.
And back to sometimes why we run pilots is because of that. Is something will bubble up in a pilot that we're going, ooh, didn't think of that one.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't even know that existed or that could happen that way.
Yeah.
And the pilot surfaces it.
And I think some of the benefit of working with somebody to coach you or with an agency or a company to help you along the way is that they've seen those before. They know the rules. I think about one of the people in the business, whether it was BI or Merritts or somebody, they were running a program with Anheuser-Busch, their distributors, their salespeople, and they wanted to instill a particular knowledge set about the beer, and they were having a hard time getting that across to the sales team. This is told to me by Gene Wilberg, who
he used to
was
be
in that space, right? And so management specifically said, we want you to take these tests and quizzes, and here's the educational information, and you have to work on this on your own. You have to turn in your own work. But they really didn't enforce that too much. And so they knew that these guys were going to get together and they were going to share out all the information, they knew this was going to happen. And so they created a really nice incentive, and they kind of said, hey, don't work together, but wink, wink. And they all got together for beer and pizza or whatever. And they like, hey, what'd you get for question number 1? What'd you get for question number 2? Right. And it forced them to start talking about the questions. And well, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right, which is exactly what Anheuser-Busch wanted to happen, that their distributors were more involved in the brand.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can actually use those rules to get an outcome that is an unintended consequence, but it actually was intended.
And you need to be reasonable
Right.
about the rules too. I mean, you can't, the sales guy can't say, well, where's the document of the program? Like, there's 102 rules here?
Exactly.
It's like, the heck with this, I can remember 4.
Yeah, yeah. Really fun.
You need to be reasonable. So,
Yeah.
I think that, and there is the 80-20 rule. Usually when we're helping folks with designing programs, back from past experience, there's a bucket of certain things that are fundamentals in rules.
Right, right.
And then in the structure, we can get into that later, rules, program designs, tiers, flights, where people might be placed within the program. But it's usually more about how we expect you to behave.
Yes.
In the program, and what counts and what doesn't count.
Yeah.
So when Fred sends in his invoice or documents his claim online, and the program ended June 30th, and Fred said, "Well, it's from August 16th." So what? You go, Fred, right in the rules. It says all invoice claims must be submitted by June 30th. You didn't do that. Oh yeah, I see that. We're going to take care of it this time.
Yeah.
But that kind of thing.
Right.
Or else people, I hate to say it, some people will get a little greedy and try to bend the rules.
Oh, I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's run through these. So we have the budget for the KPIs of the top trip. So that's number 5 on your list of elements of program design.
Mm-hmm. Again, budgets need to be based on what's reasonable, what's attainable. And the budget naturally is the investment in the program. And when you run some budget scenarios, there's many things that encompass budget. It's not just paying for the indicators.
Right.
There's probably 3 or 4 things that talks about the components of a program. And so obviously, yes, there's going to be the outcome of the deliverable of that award, be it a trip, be it points, whatever. That's an expense. However, if your program needs a platform, and that expense on that part of the budget is what I'd say variable. That's going to be as great or poor as the program runs.
Yeah.
But you need to come up with something in your budget that's middle ground. Secondarily, is if I need to run this program on a platform.
Platform meaning?
Meaning some type of system that's on the web that my salespeople can go to, that they go in and they see the rules, they submit a claim or they submit a document, or the home office is doing that. We're taking information out of Salesforce and spitting it back. Whatever that is, maybe there's a learning management system on this tool. We can cover that way down the road. But I need to centralize this, is what I mean about a platform.
Okay.
And there's platforms out there that are ready to go, chassis built, you just to put the aesthetics on the way you want.
Okay.
There's a cost to that. You may have an implementation cost, you may have a monthly cost to run it. So that's the second part. Third part, which is really important, that I see doesn't get as much attention, and I hammer this down on people. It's back to the communication of the program. And this is where you need sales management. Get creative, have some fun, bring in your marketing team. You're going to need to give this program a brand name, a moniker, a thought, a theme, whatever. And not that that's cost, that's just what's in our headset. But in a mode of communication, we know there's a few ways to do that. There's personal communication, there's digital, we're on our phones and our laptops all day long now, it seems. And then there's physical communications.
Right.
So what you need to do is say, I can't like set this program and then just let it go on its own, because 3 months later people are saying, what is that
What
program?
happened to
What
it?
happened? Or
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
really hear much about it anymore.
Yeah.
So you need to put your marketing hat on and put a campaign together
Hmm.
that says, I'm going to have this many touch points, a
Hmm.
town hall, meetings, events, talk it up. Maybe if it's a channel program or at the offices where the sales guys are, there's a poster in the lunchroom,
Right.
I don't know. Maybe there's some form of physical sheet or placard or something that can go out there.
Right.
We run programs where, there's a retail type system, and people go in the lunchroom and there's a big old 24 by 36-inch poster about, run for the sun program and da da da, you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
And so that there's a cost to that. There's going to be a fixed
Hmm.
cost. If you're really thinking it through, you want to benchmark that against a calendar and the number of frequencies of hits. It
Right.
might be a combination of high tech, high touch, meaning that certain things are going to go out across the wire on the internet. Certain things are going to be mailed. Maybe there's a kickoff to the program. So I know when we work with we had a
Hmm.
couple themes. We did that one theme, it's a whole new ball game.
Right.
And
Oh
people,
yeah.
to
That's
announce the
right.
program, they actually got a little box at their house, and there was a signed baseball in there
Yeah.
by some famous athlete, and it's like it's a whole new ball game, and it was
Right.
a nice little deliverable, and said,
Yeah.
got me going, wow, what's this all about? And then
Yeah.
they had to come to the meeting
Yep.
to figure out what the new game was going to be and how it was going
Right.
to work. But let's just say, for argument's sake, there was 50 people that needed to get that. The kit might have cost $10 each.
Right.
It's an expense
Yeah.
right there. It's a
It's an
fixed
expense.
cost.
Right.
So that's what three things. And then the other thing, back to sales management, is if you feel you need help on this, there'll be a chargeable for that you need to factor in, and that
Right.
could be all across the board depending on how much you need, where you need the help, those type of things. So those four components are pretty much, what is going to make up the budget.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about the first program that I was in, when like that, back to Intel, and we talked about this problem that occurred, and a major loss. And so they went to an incentive company and started this. And the first deliverable I got, so everybody in the sales team got something delivered to our homes.
Yeah.
And it was a little palm tree plant, that the idea was that
Yeah.
you could grow this at home, and by the time that we were all going to
Oh,
go
it
to
was-
the islands,
yeah.
you'd
By the
actually
time
have
of the
it.
tour, you'd have your palm
You'd
tree.
have your palm tree, right? And it was, let's talk about, it was manipulative, because my wife got that
Yeah.
before I got home, and I didn't even know it was coming. And she's like, "We're going to Tahiti," So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
pretty cool, and that was a fairly inexpensive little thing to drop in the mail.
But the byproduct too of a great campaign, it gets talked up. Back to what we said earlier about inspiration, leadership, expectations, that program can actually start to demonstrate the personality of the leadership.
That's true.
And it could be fairly straight, narrow. It could be gimmicky. It
Yeah.
could be fun.
Yep.
I mean, guys like you and me, we like to have a little fun along the way, so
Yeah.
we can put some silly things in there in the
Right.
campaign. Even like your guy with the banana, you have some Toco Memento bananas put on there.
Sure.
I don't know
Right.
what you do,
Right.
but that's where the sales management
Hmm.
needs to get the team together.
Right.
If you don't have the internal resources to pull it off, go to an agency,
Yeah.
do something. But it's such a key. You can have the best indicators, the best budget about the indicators, the best trip out there, or
Right.
whatever the end goal is.
Yeah.
And if you don't communicate it
Hmm.
constantly, purposefully, and make it fun and exciting, your program's not going to thrive.
Yeah.
It's going to just collapse.
Yeah, no kidding. I want to touch base on one about the KPIs, and I feel like I'm sort of the person in our conversation that brings it home and talks directly to management. And I think that's because I work for so many different organizations at the C level, and I've had more than one owner of a business, and we're talking businesses 50 to 100 million. That's typically where I'm working. And inevitably the conversation is, John, I don't understand why I'm paying people to do their job that they already are doing today. And why are they not, here's this, Why are they not so motivated? Because I'm motivated to do this. Why are they don't share the same motivation that I have? And I have to turn literally, I'm like, I can't believe they're actually asking this question.
Mm.
And I'll say, because you own the business and every incremental change helps you and your own pocketbook and your children and the
It
legacy
does
they're
that.
building.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Right.
Your employees are not shareholders in your business. They don't own anything. They go home. They have hobbies. They have their own desire.
Right.
Their motivation is not your motivation.
Mhm.
Unless you're planning on cutting them in on a significant portion of your business, which you're not.
Right.
Even if you brought in shareholders, it would be a very small percentage. You can't think the same way. You are not one of your employees. And I just say this because at some point you will have this conversation with ownership when you're selling a program like this, and this very question will come up. And I think you will have to be completely candid, and you can just say, "Hey, by the way, watch this little segment. This is a problem," and they need to understand that they are not this. They don't share the same motivation of coming to work as as the ownership does.
And
Just
the old saying,
reality.
what's in it for me?
Exactly.
It's right down to the guy packing the boxes in the warehouse. If
Right.
he's just getting X bucks an hour
Yeah.
and that's it, that guy's
Precisely.
going to say, I'm not seeing any pats on the back. I'm not seeing any advancement. I made a couple of suggestions. I bought tape at a lower price. I saved the company $100 last week and
Right.
nobody said anything.
Yeah.
It's like, this, I'm not real thrilled about working here.
Right.
Now, again, back to management, back to being purposeful, back to sales leadership, back to supervisors. If the culture is, we want to recognize, we want to instill, we want to show you appreciation, we want you to be thinking, we want you to be innovative, we want you to be collaborative.
Right.
That sets a whole set of dynamics because maybe that guy you're saying have the conversation with the leader says, do we do this, Paul? Do we do this, Frank? No, we don't. So what is their motivation? That's not their fault. That's your fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes they're asking the problem's right in
Yeah,
front
exactly.
of their nose.
Right, right.
And they just need somebody to tell them we need to shape this differently.
Yeah. We're the cause of it.
We're the cause of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about a couple other KPIs that you have in your list here. We talk about winning back a client, new business, new markets, new product push, training certifications. Do you have any favorites in there, or any of them that stand out that you see quite frequently?
Yeah, my favorites, which people, I don't know why this is, it's even in employee programs and incentive programs, are the elements of collaboration and suggestions.
Right.
And then last, something that you and I talked about is, unfortunately, salespeople don't go 10 for 10. We're like baseball players.
Right.
If we get 3 out of 10, that's pretty darn good.
That's a really good
That's
batting
pretty good.
average.
But it's so important to say, well, where do we miss on the 6 or 7 out of 10? So we turn that under, lessons learned or stories shared or objections I encountered, those kinds of things. So one of the indicators can be, have you made a worthy suggestion about AB, or try to get definitive as you can. Did you bring some intel to the company that, oh, we didn't know that. We can copy it, or here's how we counter it.
Right.
And again, it's not always related to the almighty dollar. It's the means to the ends. It's the steps along the way. So to be succinct, I think things about which have this psychological effect: collaborating, making suggestions, and being innovative. If that's in the program and I'm recognized or rewarded for it, that makes me feel good too about working here. I feel like I made a contribution. Somebody listened to me. Wow, I'm seeing that contribution actually happen. I've seen companies name things like after somebody who invented it, they'll give it a funny moniker.
I love that. I love that. Right.
Yeah. So that adds up to, hey, this is a fun place to work.
Yeah. I talked about a little bit earlier. We went to this flag football game. And you were saying that even the plays that you were teaching these kids to run, and they get to name them themselves, right?
Which, we got in the playbook, and it's like, corner out, post, something or other. And And then they might have a name, like a generic football name. We said they'd come up with names like, well, let's call that like Taco Bell or whatever.
Right.
And then we're shouting down in the field like Taco Bell cheeseburger.
Yes.
But that's because Jake said, let's call it that. We go, okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
Let's call it that.
I love that.
So
Right.
same thing can happen in business. And
Yeah. That is really fun
yeah.
when you approach it that way. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to come back to SMART. We talked about the KPIs,
Yeah.
the acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time frame.
Well, that's a benchmark to go by.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we often find, the old saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it,
Right.
is that you may have an indicator that you really like, that you need, but then you say, oh, I don't know how we get the information to even measure that.
Right.
And sometimes you'll find you run a program to create the way to measure it because there's just some data not being gathered or collected someplace.
Right.
And maybe it's because of lack of initiative. Maybe it's there, but somebody said, I didn't know we needed that. I didn't know that would be an important component.
Right.
Or maybe there's some systems that need to be married up to get that. But so anyway, it needs to be measured. Specific means that it needs to have like a beginning and an end. Here's what we want you to do.
Right.
Here's how we're going to measure it. And is it reasonable? I mean, we've all been victim in sales where somebody says, okay, I got the quotas for next year. You're 140% above last year.
Right.
You're 192% above last year. The guy goes, well, this ain't going to work.
Right. Exactly. Right.
I'm looking for my next job, top down.
Right.
But if things are attainable and, reasonable with a stretch, and then back to, is this really relevant to what we want to get done here?
Right.
Just, process it. Again, you can't go out of the gate with 19 different objectives. So the indicators are going to be related to the objectives, and you can't have 19 of them. So you have to, if you want to say prioritize is going to be relevant. And there's where some thought needs to come behind all this. So back to, if you're running these programs, your head's going to hurt a little bit.
Right.
Because it's going to take some time and energy to figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we talked enough about rules, so I jumped around here a little bit. But let's get into budgeting.
The one thing, though, I didn't get into with budgeting is you want to come out with a framework of a budget. We all know in business there's fixed costs, there's variable costs. We talked about the elements of where the budget should be spent. The biggest variable is going to be in how the program's going and the outcome of the rewards. But there might be instances within the duration of the program where you need to up the ante a little bit. So you need more budget. And that may be against a variable of an indicator. So like, hey, if we get more applications in this month, we want to gin up before the seasonality like cuts us off. So if you get more applications or more proposals in, like triple points.
Right.
That's going to my budget, but hopefully the end line is it also increases my probability of getting more sales. So there could be some factor that comes into your life while you're running the incentive program that wasn't a known thing that you're counting on in December, and now it's April and you're going, oh my goodness, this happened, or we need to like run against this or up this or overcome this somehow. I'm going to need more budget to do it. So you have to, I guess the word is put a little contingency fund in there for the unexpected.
Right.
And if you don't spend it, that's great. And if you need it, you're not surprising management with it.
Do you have any rules of thumb, just guidelines for costs on programs and platforms?
I would say
and
that,
all that kind of thing?
When you look at the big pie, again, you got to put the budget against the impact of the awards. But maybe that's going to be, you're going to have if you're working an admin program, that's going to be maybe 10% of your budget, that fixed cost.
Okay.
I'd actually advocate that the communications is going to be, a little bit more. So maybe there's 10, 15 right there. So so it's almost like 75, 25. Again, you want to weight it to the emphasis going on the rewards.
Okay.
Try to keep your fixed costs as low as possible. But in that pie, that's about where you should be and where you should come out.
Okay.
I mean, if you're running a program, let's say, for instance, a company wants to run a program and there's a fixed budget. There's fixed budgets, there's open budgets. You always want to try to have an open budget, more incremental gain. You pay for it. You love paying for it because you're seeing the advance. But
Right.
let's just say, for instance, it's fixed and the manager, all right, we'll give you $50,000 to run the program. And you go out, you get a platform, you get a provider, you get a consultant, you put a great communications program behind it, and all of a sudden you spend $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 20,000 against 50,000. That's not jiving with me.
Right.
If you did all that and your cost to operate the program with the platform and maybe some communications 5,000 against your rewards of 50,000, we're good.
Okay.
Now, the type of programs we run, we're sometimes in the hundreds of thousands, but even then we have to sit back and reflect is, okay, when we put it on a spreadsheet, where's our communications budget coming in against the end line? Is it too little? Is it too much? Can we scale it back? Like
Communications meaning even the posters and all
we're
that
going to do
stuff.
the posters. We're going to mail the palm trees to John's house, all that stuff. Well, the palm tree costs us $25 to mail.
Yeah.
Let's get something a little similar that costs $10 to mail. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's just a framework of where the budget should kind of fall out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's super helpful. You talked about leveraging any relationships to reduce costs. What do you mean by that?
Well, leaders, if you put your thinking caps on, sometimes there's a manufacturer or a vendor or somebody else who augments your sales process.
Right.
This is going to help them as well.
Right.
So I remember a while back, we were running might have been for you or someone else, we were running a trip to a certain resort. And but the communication budget was a little thin. So I called the resort one day and talked to the GM and say, hey, we got this ABC company out your way, and we're going to bring 200 people here. And they were looking at the ABC property, but we decided on you, the DEF property. And they're kind of squeezing me a little bit. What do you mean squeezing? Well, we want to kind of announce the program and put the flavor of the Rocky Mountains in it. So you happen to have any apparel that you sell in the gift shop, like a hat or a hoodie or something with your logo on it, and I'm going to need 200 of them. There's 200 people.
You can always ask.
Something. And do you know, I got more responsible. Well, yeah, nobody's ever asked me for that before.
I love it.
And I'm going, well, I just thought of it, but hey, I get 200 of something at $20 each. That's something my sponsor does not have to pay for. Right. Just a real simple example of, is there anybody else in your circle? Sometimes when we're working these channel programs, there's a co-op. The manufacturer wants to put some skin in the game, or will offset the cost of the awards too, because they're like, oh, you're running this program? This is going to help push something out the door for us.
Yeah.
Everybody has a budget somewhere. You just need to know how to tap into it.
Right.
So if you can get couple, 3 prongs into other people's areas, that will help fund your program.
Yeah.
You need to be thinking of how you could possibly do that.
Yeah. I remember when we did a program, we were some kind of a baseball theme or something, and we had some budget issues, and we're like, okay, how are we going to pay for this? And I can't remember if it was Microsoft or Lotus or somebody said, hey, we'd like to take a few minutes and talk about our program to your whole sales team that you're bringing in for this. And we're like, well, what would you be willing to sponsor that for, right? We never even thought about that. And, lo and behold, they paid, I don't know, $5,000 or whatever for the opportunity. And, sometimes there's money, and then there's, like you said, merchandise is available.
Well, you just have to ask if you're the sales leader and you've got your little task force that helps you run the program, and hey, Jennifer, don't we work with that promotional products company where you get all the swag for the employees, that kind of stuff? How much business we give those guys a year?
There you go.
We're spending $100,000 a year with those guys, and equip, we do the onboarding kits with them. Hey, can you go back and maybe put a little bit of whatever and tell them we're running a sales thing? Can we get like 50 more of those kind of kits, like gratis,
Yeah.
And it can't hurt to ask. And often, because the ask never occurs, the deliverable never occurs.
Yeah.
And again, every manufacturer, every vendor, they got some money tucked away somewhere that when you get 2 or 3 of them to ante up, it can really help you in your budget.
Yeah.
So just a key point to keep in mind.
Yeah, I love that.
Doesn't always have to be self-funded by the organization.
So I think kind of the big kahuna here is the awards, the fun part you talked about.
Yeah.
And we broke those down into points, merchandise, gift cards, travel, and events. I think those are the
Mhm.
main buckets there. Um, Talk about those and some other things that you have on your list as far as what the actual awards can be.
Yeah, I guess the let's take the points off the table. An award. It's not the reward, but it's the means to the end.
Hmm.
If I'm on a points type of system that I can redeem possibly throughout the program, or at certain, if I hit threshold, I can redeem my points, or I've got
Right.
to get X points to be involved in the President's Club and be considered to take the trip someplace. So it's
Yeah.
just that's just the
Well,
means to
before you
the
go on
end.
though, when you're saying you choose a points program, what's the alternative to a points program that people
Oh,
would?
you don't really need point. You can just set out measures to say that if you do this over this time frame,
Yeah.
we're going to measure you, and there's a metric that you're
Okay.
scoring.
Okay.
But it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be points.
But points, the reason you like point systems is why?
Is because it's fluid. I can, again, back to cash. If I'm the sales leader and I know, let's say if I value it, just for argument's sake, a point at $1,
Yeah.
then I can start manipulating points and a currency
Oh,
that I don't really have to discuss, to say it's $1, but it's X points.
right.
And usually that it's something that's not going to be involved with the compensation program.
Okay.
So it gives me, I'll use the overused word currency to
Mm,
put against initiatives that my comp program doesn't address.
yes.
All right. And now that doesn't mean you always need points. You
Right.
can run contests and programs. And we didn't even get into in the structure, you can run a program and have contests within. Now, and let me use an example there. Um, and maybe we'll use golf as an
Sure.
analogy.
Right.
For those of us who play golf, and me not very well, there's a score at the end of your round. But I think we've all been on corporate outings where when you're playing golf, and let's say the score is 72 points
Right.
that I'm striving to get. However, there might be a long drive contest, a closest to the
Oh,
pin
yeah.
contest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing to do with points. It's just whoever on your team gets closest to the pin
Hmm.
at the award banquet. Everybody in the team's going to get something because you're on my team and you hit close to the pin, so the four of us win something.
Yeah.
But there's no really points against it. It's just a
Sure.
measure. It's a point in time. It's scored and it's rewarded.
I love that.
Yeah.
But keep on going. So we had, if you want to talk about points, merchandise, gift
Oh,
cards,
the
the whole accoutrement
yeah.
of things that people can do.
Oh gosh. I mean, there's pros and cons to each one of those. I don't even think we can touch all that
Hmm.
right now. For years in the incentive business, um, merchandise was kind of yeah, and this is, I'm talking about brand name merchandise, really nice items
Hmm.
that you'd buy at retail.
Right.
That was the base staple of things.
Right.
When you're structuring a program, again, the merchandise is usually, it's right in there as being affordable, but it sets an aspirational goal too. So if I want a new set of golf clubs or, a new piece of electronics or something, and
Hmm.
I get through my incentive program, I might think, I want that Bose Comfort headset,
Right.
on my trips. I don't want to go out and spend $230 of my own money to do it. So that's why merchandise is attractive. Then gift cards started coming into the marketplace years ago, and they have their place as well. Now, most of these are delivered in a digital fashion right to
Right.
your phone, but you can do this, get a gift card for X, or do this and get points to a gift card of your choice. There's different
Oh,
ways you can do that.
okay.
Pros and cons of gift cards, pros and cons of merchandise, and then
Hmm.
the most costly award still seems to be, from the sponsor standpoint, is the travel.
Right.
Now there's individual travel that if it's in the structure of the program that I can earn a trip of my choice based on how I wish to spend my points.
Right.
Or within the program, there's these three things you can do for travel. So if you want to take the cruise, the golf outing, or the spa stay, that's up to you.
Hmm.
That's another way to do it. But our common sense tells us travel's going to be more expensive than the Weber Grill.
Right. Sure.
So
Right.
that's usually more upper tier. However, you can get creative with rewards and seed in a learning experience. Go to the chef's thing, cooking, or whatever. So you can have these experiences now, depending on what's in my intrinsic self that I like to do.
Right.
I mean, you love to cook. I might like to take guitar lessons, and the guitar center's great, but it's going to be X a lesson. But if I can get that in my points or offset by the company, my intrinsic self might like to do that. What I'm saying is the awards can be as far as your imagination wants to take you. I've seen people do inside staff. You get a day off, the old thing, you get a special parking place, or you get the banana. That's where, again, personality, fun, however you like to do it. But I'd say in the pecking order, it's gift cards, because you can buy a gift card at low value. I mean, you can get a gift card for $10, a Starbucks gift card. If you want to get something of merchandise that's worth it, and you're going to be in the $100 and above.
Right.
And then the travel slots are a little bit more expensive. And tickets, events, I guess I put as a subset of travel. It's amazing that I'm a sports guy, you're a sports guy. If you want to take a family of 4, we live here in Los Angeles, to a Rams game. In this day and age. And now,
given that we're going tomorrow, and we know exactly what we're paying,
which we're happy to pay it, I think.
Right.
But I was saying to myself, the way tickets and events now work, it's kind of like airline inventory. Like this, the Rams are playing this team, they're bad, tickets are X. Oh, the Rams are playing the 49ers, interstate rivalry, tickets are Y. There's a premium price for the tickets.
Exactly.
So therefore, you're thinking, cheap seats are in the hundreds of dollars for a sports outing. So if you're a family of 4 and you want to take your family to a pro football game and park and buy pizza and a Coke, you're going to drop like $1,000.
Easily.
Yeah. And that's just, let's park that. It's absurd. It disturbs me. However, if I'm in my incentive program and there's a portal where I can redeem for events, concerts, tickets, or whatever, again, back to justifiability. It's not my money, my paycheck. I have to spend it because I earned it in my points. I'll go see the Willie Nelson concert. I'll go to the Rams game. I'll go to these things. And the only other thing I can emphasize is naturally common sense will tell us try to have a choice factor.
Right.
You might be a golf guy. I'm a travel guy. I'm a cooking guy. So when I'm in the program, some people don't like to travel. If you say we're all going on a cruise, you might have lost 30% of your audience right there. Personally, I love cruises, but other people say, I'll never go on a cruise again. I'm like, I get sick, or I don't like the water. But if it's a cruise, a golf stay, or wine tasting, totally different thing. You're probably going to hit somebody. The end of the story is always include awards that are going to attract the widest audience for you, that there's a deliverable in that award that the participant says, I want that.
And all the more reason why I think point systems make a lot of sense to give people that kind of shopping and the currency. I love that. Because so in the middle of the program, if I need more proposals, we're talking about, now I can increase the points that I'm willing to pay or pay out for proposals.
I'd say that in the industry, points are probably used 70, 80% of the time as the means to the end in a program.
You talked about donating to a charity. That was one thing that...
Well, that's another way. That's like I'm saying, your imagination, you hit on a little bit earlier. The other thing that leaders need to be thinking about now is the changing demographics of the workforce. And when you're a sales leader, you have to think about a marketer, back to thinking of your audience. If you're in a certain industry, well, you might be working through contractors, and these guys founded the business 20 years ago, and now they're 55-year-old gentlemen, and they've got salespeople coming in who are 25 and 30, and maybe somebody's a boomer and somebody's a millennial. I mean, you have these mixed generational zones in our workplace. And not only that's the reason it does kind of dovetail with keeping the awards out there. That's something for everyone, because I may be of a certain generation where I am very conscious about my social environment, helping others. And if I can use my points to donate to a charity of my
Love that.
choice or an affinity I have,
Right.
that might really get my juices going, because
Right.
I'd love to give this entity a donation, but I don't have the extra $100 this week to do it. But if I can do it through the incentive program, yahoo.
Yeah.
And some people, again, don't like group travel.
I get that.
They might say, I don't really want to go and hang out with my
Right.
boss for.
Yeah.
I don't like the guy.
Believe
or
me, I've
whatever.
been there.
And
Yeah.
if that's the only award, I'm out.
Yeah.
But if I can do that, or if I don't want to take the group trip, I can do this trip on my own, or
Right.
I can subsidize it by get backyard furniture or new patio center, then that's fine too. Again, it needs some thought. It needs to have a deliverable that everybody can get excited about,
Yeah.
and it's back to generational differences. So
That's cool. We talked about communications and the third party, and I remember theme development being in one of those. We talked about communications quite a bit.
yeah.
And I have a list of what did I come
You
up
and I
with?
have been through many
Yeah.
themes in our, I guess, themes, as you say, and again, sales leaders. We're all creative people in our own right. There might be something going on with the company at a certain point in time,
Right.
or just in the culture of a company that they want to communicate through some type of theme, mission, end goal, whatever it might be. All those things need to be taken into consideration, because the theme, again, should inspire action and where we want to be at the end of the program.
Yeah.
So it's all.
Yeah, I think we came up with 25.
Oh gosh,
It just,
yeah.
but there's thousands of these.
There's thousands
right?
of themes. Yeah.
And I remember the one we did at Productivity Point, because point was we called it the point of excellence, which really
Wow, that was
communicated what
really
we were trying to,
creative.
right? But it was trying to, that was the whole point.
Yeah.
We were trying to all get on the same page with one another. But I was just looking at some of these, and I'm sure you can go to ChatGPT and have them generate all sorts of different names, right? But I would say have fun with these, right?
Have fun.
Yeah.
Again, think of it in a logistical manner. It should be imprinted on some things. Down the road, you want to instill the impression somehow.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a theme that's like 14 words long.
Right.
Short, sweet, to the point. And again, put your marketing hat on. And again, the word campaign. This is a slogan, a moniker, whatever you want to call it, that is going to take you through the duration of the program. Some companies just have one, and every year they just call it the same thing. Like you can use point of excellence every year.
Sure.
You just change the KPIs that you want to emphasize each year, or each year you can change it up. Or you can have the master program, that's a name of X, and then you can run these short spurt programs and call them Y. Over the next 90 days, we're going to have right out of the gate, we're going to have the fast start program to the point of excellence. And here's how the fast start program works. If you do this by this, by the end of April, whatever, you're going to get
Right.
So you got a master theme, a sub theme, you got core umbrella initiatives, and you have sub initiatives to run within the contest within the program.
Yeah. And I've been a recipient of every one of those, and it's
Me
really
too.
cool. Especially the Fast Start program. I remember I was one of the Fast Start people at Intel, and I didn't even realize that I had earned that.
Well,
Until-
see, they said it and forget it. They probably didn't.
Well, who
keep
knows?
you-
It
keep
could
you
have been
informed
me
along the
not
way.
opening all my mail, but I got a beautiful Hartman briefcase back when people were, and this was a leather one, so it was probably $1,000 back then.
Yeah.
It was really expensive.
Yeah.
And I remember it got delivered to the office, and I was, I think, the only person in the office, in the regional office, that got one.
Wow.
And they're like, "How
So
did
you're
Fox
strutting
win
in, you're
this?"
strutting in with your
Oh,
briefcase.
it's huge.
Hey, Fox, where'd
Yeah.
you get that? Well, I won it in the program.
Right. I think I was maybe 24 at the time. It was a big deal. So it was really fun.
Get on a rabbit trail. I mean, one of the things that intrigued me about the business, and what actually catapulted me into the business, is it was my second job after selling the the cleaning things, where I got the
Right.
Omaha steaks. Well, my first award was the cup for selling door to door. My second award, and these are physical awards with
Right.
the president letter and the Omaha Steaks.
Yeah.
And then I think this third year is with this company.
Hmm.
They hung out there this travel deal. And I had never been to the Bahamas. I'm like, I'm like a
Yeah.
28-year-old guy or
Right.
something. Haven't, not really, wasn't well traveled. And lo and behold, I won it, and then my wife and I got to go to the Bahamas for 4 nights, 5 days.
Sweet.
And we went with other people in the regions who they won their region.
Yeah.
It was a regional program. I won my region. It was 6 states and I came in first. So then I'm back to you. I'm down there with my comrades, other people. I've heard of them, but I never met them.
Exactly.
The
Right.
mucky mucks, to use a term, went down to the program. They didn't
Yeah.
know who I was.
Which was
They're-
great.
They're in the
Right.
home office somewhere and
Yeah.
they never heard of me before.
Yeah.
And nice guys. We had a delightful time. And bonds to this day,
Yeah.
still from that.
Me too.
And memories of that trip. And it was the red carpet treatment.
Mhm.
And I remember I went up to the admin desk at the trip and I was talking to people and I thought my intuitive self said, well, the company's running this. These people must work at the home office
Right.
and run this. So I go and say, Karen, I don't think I met you or whatever. Da, da, da. Like, so do you live around Grand Rapids? Oh, we're with ABC Company. We run this trip for you guys. We're the hired help. And I'm going,
Exactly.
oh, wait a minute. You mean you just like do this for other companies? Yeah, that's our business model. We're the incentive provider for your company. We pick the destination, we get the people there. What's the name of your company? So I started researching
There you go.
these incentive companies, which I didn't know existed. And I then took the initiative to approach a couple, 3 of them, and I got myself a job.
Yeah. And that's where you are. I know.
And off track, stepping stone, guy selling door to door,
Yeah.
wins a little moniker cup, right? Then gets into legitimate B2B sales, selling industrial chemicals. Then I switched gears to go to the insurance business. And it had some physicality because of physical damage and things like that. But
Yeah.
then I won a trip. So when I went to the incentive potential employer, I had a story to tell about been there, done that.
Exactly.
I've been a participant. I've seen things come at me, what I don't like.
Right.
I'm a little bit more schooled
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
and that was enough to get me a start in the incentive industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Kind of a stepping stone.
yeah, I guess mine started with my father, when you think about it and you see these kind of things and like, wow, that's kind
Yeah.
of possible.
Yeah.
And I think the most fun experience I had, and I would throw this out to anybody that's listening, is that your sales team, it is really fun when you have what's called a president's club. Many people refer to these as club.
Yeah.
And this is to recognize your top performers. You take them someplace nice, and the president of your firm goes with.
Key
And-
management goes,
Yeah.
key leadership goes. And boy, that in and of itself, because often, depending on the size of the company, the guys in the regions don't get to meet the key executives of the
Exactly.
company,
Right.
which is a shame. However, when people can take off their business face and just come down to being people, and they're at an event and they're on site, and sometimes those presidents clubs will be the right balance of maybe meetings.
Definitely.
Couples get around, they do a dine around. Maybe there's an award ceremony,
Right.
a final night
Absolutely
banquet or
awards.
something.
Yes. Yes.
And to that, and what also helps the key executives when they're on these trips, they often back to the insulation. They don't hear from the bottom up, and they're out there, and something will come up. But everybody categorically goes away feeling better.
Yes.
And even key executives, because they don't get to go on a lot of trips either. And it's kind of a nicety for them
Oh,
when you think about it.
absolutely. Right.
So they're out rubbing elbows with their warriors in the sales force, and the
Right.
sales team,
Yeah.
getting information, getting dialogue, and the club effect takes place. And I've been on trips where they say, Brant, can't wait till I see you next year. And like, I expect you to earn it again
Right.
next year. And I'm going to win the longest drive.
Right. Exactly. Right. So again, depending on where you're at, you may not, all of these terms, point programs, platforms, presidents clubs, they may all be foreign terms to you. You can find out about them online.
Yeah.
You can, touch base with us. But this is something that we've seen have an impact on a firm that takes them way, way, way beyond wherever they were. And to kind of come back to, and we've still got a little bit more here to go, but to come back to the time at Intel, they ran a program about this issue where we had lost a major client, and it was a turning point for the firm. And they ran a program called Operation Crush. It has its own Wikipedia page. It was absolutely huge. Bill Davidow was running it and important about it. He wrote a book on it, and it was really a wonderful testimony to the company recognizing the error of their ways, making a lot of stupid decisions that got them to where they were at, got fat, dumb, and happy, super arrogant, and who knows, maybe they need to do that again today, given where the stock is at. But they recognized that really it was a sales issue. We were getting outsold. And so we ran this program. I got to qualify to go to Maui to Tahiti. And, it really the rest is history, because all the competitors that we were running against at that time all went out of business.
Yeah.
And so we spent a good year mopping up where our competitors had now stopped really thinking, and they had won a couple of deals, and I think they started getting pretty arrogant, and we became very humble through that time. And so I just encourage you, if you're listening to this, to think beyond just a simple sales contest. You can actually change the shape and direction of your firm for many years to come.
Well, and the overused word is there's a strategic reason behind this. So when you're talking to the higher ups, again, the parent needs to set the master strategy and then the execution of that.
Yeah.
But embedded in that strategy and tactics of running a sales incentive program, be it dealer-based or direct sales-based or whatever, based on whatever they're confronted with, back to the SWOT analysis at that time and place, the strategy of a sales incentive program is right in there. The tactics are all the things we're talking about. And do you run on a platform? Do you run it yourself? What tchotchkes do you send out?
Yeah.
All those are what awards. They're all the tactical part of it.
Yeah.
But the fun part that I think like guys like you and I thrive on is that's like all secondary. The main thing is right at the start. Why are we doing this? Why are we running this? What do we expect to see from it? That's strategy.
Yeah.
And should this be embedded? And I've also seen it flip where once it's run, the sales management may bring the thought process, the sales leadership or executive leadership, the CEO, and then the CEO won't let it go.
Exactly.
It becomes like their little baby.
It should be.
It should be.
Right.
They start to own it. Like, hey, Brant, where are we going next year? What's the program? What theme are you guys thinking of? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that?
Right.
And they start to buy into it. That's really cool.
Yeah. I've seen
that happen.
I've seen it. Yeah. Because in many times, the founders of these companies, they have lost touch with their customers, right? When they were small, the number of the separation from them to customer might have been 1 or 2 steps, right? And as the company grows, they start losing contact with their customers. And the easiest way to bridge that gap is certainly go out and see customers. I preach that all the time. And the second is go talk to your sales team and find out what's really going on.
And another observation, again, it really depends on market size, culture, companies. And I say this with all due respect for CEOs, CFOs. The however is many CFOs, CEOs have never carried a bag.
That's right.
They have not been sales guys, sales women out in the everyday. What I really consider the heartblood of the heartbeat of the organization.
Right.
Sales people, they're the warriors. They're out there taking the arrows.
Getting rejection.
We strike out 7 out of 10 times, and we're still standing.
Yeah.
That empathy is sometimes not there because from leadership down, because the people at the top have not done it. Now that doesn't mean they can't do it. They just haven't been in their career the guy to do it.
Right.
And where sales leadership bridges that gap is they have to come back and do this with confidence to explain to the owner, the leader, the CFO, hey, John, here's what we're going through here. Here's the dynamics of what's working down here.
Right.
And I respect, you were never on the truck. You were never driving around. You're great at this. but this is why we need to do this, and this is what we now need to solve, and this is why I need to do this to keep our best performers. Because at
Right.
the end of the day, I want the glue that keeps the best people hanging around here.
Yeah.
And anybody with intelligence, how do you say no to that, even if
Yeah.
you're the guy at the top?
Yeah.
But don't take it lightly. Not everybody that's at the top has been a sales guy.
That's true. Yeah. And if they have, it's maybe been too long.
Well, maybe. But
So then the final thing we have before we get to running a pilot program, we talked about talking about creating your own Q&A. So this is sort of the rules, but to think about, here's the possible questions that the participant in the program is going to be asking, right? And so I'm just going to throw out a few. You can comment if you
Sure.
want.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that people ask commonly would be, well, what are the goals, right? So we talked about that. And how are you going to measure success?
Agree.
Make sure that you've done that. What are the prizes and rewards for winning? So again, we talked about that. These need to be documented on
Yes.
your portal or the platform that we talked about.
It needs to be in a repository that be pre-thought, like you're saying, and taking some of the unknown or unexpected out of the equation. Nobody likes surprises.
Right.
So when you give an opportunity that maybe you start with Q&A to educate the audience, but then you will also allow them or equipped to say, if you're reading this Q&A and we missed a Q&A, please come back to us.
I like that.
Yeah,
I
please
like
come
that.
back to us.
That's nice.
Because sometimes sitting in the boardroom, you don't think of everything.
That's true.
Yeah, and again, that actually is glue, because people then say they're collaborating and they're helping structure the program. Like,
I like
hey, I
that.
read your Q&A, but there's nothing in there about if this happens at this time, what are we going to do?
Right.
And you're like, oh, we didn't think of that one. Thank you.
Yeah, you're reminding me of Kurt Sahakian, who's an attorney, was telling me one of the best lines he puts in all of his contracts. And I said, okay, what is that? And he said, I always write in there that within the first 90 days, we both can come back and change this contract, because there's some learning that goes on with something that we go on, and we don't want to have to go back through negotiation. We just want to be able to make a change. And I thought, wow, that is really smart to write that in. So anyway, just a little free little ditty there for you. So will the contest be team-based or individual?
That's all, again, thought through program structure. It's always nice to have, and maybe let's go back to budgets. I think the optimum program is to have an open-ended budget. Meaning the more you do and the better game we're advancing, the more budget I'm willing to put against this. I'll spend dollars all day long.
Why put a limit on
if we're advancing the ball? So that's open, and who's going to care if we're advancing the ball, so to speak. So that's component number one. But where the team comes in is, again, what we said earlier, is that leadership needs to be thinking about, who am I trying to influence and who's making a contribution to the end sale? And I mean, I don't want to get too far off the trail, but you can run a sales incentive program and be inclusionary to a lot of different people. I remember I was at one company, and it was a small enough company I could walk in the back room where the boxes were, the product was being shipped. And I was having a conversation, and I said to the one gentleman, I said, so where do you think you fit in the picture? He goes, I wrap boxes all day, I put tape on them. I said, not really. I said, when we and the sales team are out talking about something, one of our things is we say, but the deliverable is going to happen within the next days, and it's going to be insulated this way when you get it, and nobody else does that. So when I explained that to him, and the importance of what he thought was just wrapping a box, if it had insulation, no insulation, or whatever, how that helped me in the sales process. So then we actually started to measure for them, because they're human beings and they're packing boxes, and sometimes they get distracted, and element A, B, and C goes in, they skip D and go to, whatever.
Right, happens.
That happens, that we were able to measure the outcome of the packaging. And we involved the back end people in the sales incentive program. We had it from front end to back end.
That's a great team.
And they're not sales guys. But what we brought into them was, and we instilled in them, back to culture, back to feeling, back to collaboration, back to getting my juices going, is their end delivery was real important in our sales process. How it looked, was it timely, or was it packaged correctly?
Yeah. That's cool.
So,
How long will the contest last? That makes sense. This is a common question. What happens if I meet my personal quota, but I don't win the contest?
yeah, that's in structure and design. Again, we always recommend that if you can demonstrate improvement, but again, you don't win the contest. So, for instance, positive and negative about presidents clubs. When I run into a company and say, "Oh yeah, we're already doing this. We run a presidents club." They're good and bad. That's great. How many people earn the trip to the president
There
club?
you
Oh,
go.
the top 10%.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you have a sales force of 300 people. Yeah, so there's like 30 people or so, and
Yeah.
spouses. Yeah, we
So
take
270 don't go.
yeah. So 270. So I'll say to them, okay, well that's good, but there might be a trade-off in running that program only. Well, what's that? What happened to the guy that came in 31st, but still improved his sales by 26%?
Right.
Oh, I said, how do you think he's going to feel?
Yeah.
Oh, well, probably not too great. So I said, okay, maybe we need to put a little bit more behind this, that
Right.
there's going to be brackets. Yes, these top percent win. And I've also designed President's Club where it was, if you get to a certain level in the President's Club, you got a suite. If you get to another level in the President's Club, you got a regular guest room, but you
Yes,
still
right,
go.
right.
So here you go, like a contest within a contest, or brackets or tiers.
Sweet.
But then when you run the program, if you can measure self-improvement, but they just don't get over the bar to get to the trip. But I can get my own individual trip because I don't go on the Mucky Muck President's Club, or I can get some item, or I can do whatever with my points. Then I feel I've been included, and
Yes.
by golly, I missed it by one, but I still was recognized, and I still feel good about working with this place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
But President's Clubs in and of themselves can be careful. They can do harm sometimes.
I'm glad you
And
mentioned
you
that.
don't want to leave anybody feeling like they were left out, or, this program stinks or whatever. I improved my sales by 30%, and John goes on a trip and he edged me out by 1 percentage point.
Right. Yeah.
Don't want
Or
that.
he had a layup and he had
He had a layup, he had
Yeah.
a gimme.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah. Yeah. He had all my clients that we changed our geographic boundaries
yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How will progress be communicated? I guess the leaderboards. You talked about that. Is that something that's typically in the platform to have some
It
kind
can
of
be
a
done all
leaderboard?
ways. Again, if you're running a program yourself, it goes under the banner of communication to some degree. You need to tell people
where they
just
are.
like if you're playing a board game, you see how you advance.
Right.
And it's the same thing in these programs. People should see where they stand. Call it a standings report, if you will, for simple man's language. But you need to communicate how people are doing along the way.
Right.
And that's as creative as you can be on the back end. It doesn't need to be super elaborate. I mean, we've worked with some companies that they've got a few thousand people in the program, and we're getting the data out of Salesforce. These guys are implementing the data.
Right.
And then we just go take it from that. There's an exchange that ends up, we calculate it, and it goes into points. And at the end of the month, they say, we had these objectives. The data says you did this. With these objectives, you get X, Y, Z points. And now that's in your bucket of points towards the trip or whatever. But you can have 15 salespeople and do the same thing.
Yeah.
The mechanism and the rules are the same for everyone. It's only the numbers that change.
Okay.
The framework of everything is the same.
Okay. Number 8 is, can I get additional training or resources to help during the contest? That's like, of course you can, right?
Training and resources, meaning
Product knowledge, sales
Sure.
training. So two different rails there. So I've got, can I understand more about selling, and can I understand more about what I'm selling?
Yes, it's back to certifications, back to learning from others.
Right.
Yeah, there's many programs. There's a fair amount of a learning component to it. The old saying, you can be motivated, but if you don't have the skills or the product knowledge, you're going to end up zero.
Right.
And then if you get all the product knowledge in the world and the skills, but if you don't have an end line, so what's in it for me?
Yeah.
So you need the triangle working for you. But
Right.
yeah, always consider because that's something that, and the other
Mhm.
thing in programs too, it's like, am I in control of my own destiny?
Right.
Which, again, if it's all team based, sometimes you're not, but
Mhm.
it's kind of like,
Mhm.
the bowling thing. If I can if I am a control my own destiny and
Mhm.
I set my own handicap and I beat it, that's up to me. And if my team wins out of the four teams bowling tonight, that's great.
Right.
But my own individual goal is I've never broken 100 before, and tonight I did.
Yeah.
100 is pretty bad,
I'm sorry. I think my high score is 64. So,
we
yeah,
got,
don't take me bowling.
I
Uh,
got to give this guy an incentive to take some bowling
yeah,
lessons.
exactly. If I really cared.
Yeah.
Number 9. This one I thought was really an
Wow.
interesting FAQ. Are there any restrictions or rules I should be aware of, specifically around ethical guidelines? Anything that's legitimate, corner cutting, manipulation, all those kind of things that
Yeah.
do come up.
Yeah. Again, every business is unique.
Yeah.
And the only thing that we can advise as trusted advisors is be thinking of that.
Hmm.
Whatever your industry is, or unique to your industry,
Hmm.
or your team, most sales leaders rise from the sales force. So they've been
Right.
there, done that.
Yeah.
They know the game. When you're in sales management a little longer, you start to lose that because things change down here and
Mhm.
you're not the guy doing it anymore.
Right.
So you need to be able to tap into your team because you're now a
Mhm.
bit insulated,
Mhm.
and have them reveal what may be wrong or not quite ethical.
Right.
Again, it's back to the culture of the company.
Mhm.
Um, some companies are do whatever it takes, and other companies is I want it letter by the law. I don't want to be known for this. That's what our competitors do, and that's not how we operate here.
Yeah,
So it's
I do want to say something.
reflecting the culture.
Yeah, if you're operating in a company that offers bribes to your customers, and let me be specific, because I know of some.
Hmm.
Um, so especially those that are working on straight commission,
Hmm.
they make a lot of money when they make a big sale, and there is a very
Yeah,
big temptation to talk with customer and say, hey, Brent, you know what? If
yeah.
I win this,
And you're going to get a
get
little
this
on the
order.
back end. Yeah,
Right. And I can make it work because I can actually buy you
right.
dinners and we can go to a Bears game. We can
Yeah,
do this, we can do that. And I just say be careful with all of those kind of things because there is a legality. And those are this it's just not really a good way to run your business at all if you're allowing that kind of thing. And I do
yeah,
know organizations that sort of wink, wink. They say, "Hey, don't do that," but then they allow it to be done. Not very good, especially when I see people making things up. We talked about that
yeah,
yesterday.
yeah,
Lying to customers to try to manipulate them to making a decision like, "Hey, you're going to lose out because we actually don't have
yeah,
availability, but I can get you availability if you give me the order before the end of the month." All sorts of things that just will
yeah,
backfire on your business.
yeah.
So, again, I probably sound like the father in the room telling you these kind of things, but they are really not good for your culture.
Well, sometimes blessing and a curse, what we're saying is good for the business overall. That's how you want to operate.
Right.
Sometimes the incentive program will bring that more to a
That's
focal
what I'm
point because
saying.
it's confined in a time frame or
Yes.
something, and it
Right.
might en- in a bad way encourage people to
Yes.
do bad things because they know
Yes.
there's a this, that, and an end time zone.
Right.
And
Right.
we've also read stories where, based on program design, I think it was one
Hmm.
of the major banking industries years ago, we're running
Hmm.
some program for people about, you're going to get these incentives based on
Right.
this. So they weren't really doing things that were in the best interest of the customer.
Right.
And it was maybe poor program design, but it,
Right.
it then became unveiled to the consumers and public.
Hmm.
And that company got a very bad name and a long time to recover
Right.
from their account managers
Yeah.
saying things that were very manipulative and
Hmm.
not true,
Right.
because at the end of the day, the account manager goes, "Oh, that one's for me."
Yep. Exactly.
And
So, again, part of this course is to help you do something that's really good, that has lots of benefit to your organization, benefit to you
right,
individually. I think it underscores the reason why you do need to have other people advise you, at least kind of take a look at what you're building. Make sure that you've got a good rule structure, a platform to build this on. Otherwise, you could be leaving yourself wide open. You should definitely do these things, but just like anything else, if you're going to go, start working out and you've never worked out before, it might be a good idea to see your doctor first, right? So these are just common things. So this is not meant to be like,
But an analogy too is back to your point. You want a sure baseline. Am I healthy enough to work out?
Yeah.
But then I don't know. When I go, I haven't worked out in, let's say, 10 years. Well, maybe I need a trainer to say, okay, here's you want to ease into this. Here's what you want to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Because the old saying is we don't know what we don't know. And that could really, and physicality and working out, that could really be something bad.
Right.
But in business, it could be something bad too.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I've showed up sometimes after people have run the first program on their own and stubbed their toe.
Yeah.
And it's like, I thought I told you that, but okay, thanks for now including me.
Right.
And then also in the deliverable of these programs, I remember one time we proposed that there be a group trip, and the guy, oh, we're taking care of that ourselves. Okay, well, you're going to have like 90 people to 100 people on this trip. Yeah, but Susie in the back's going to be down there 2 days ahead. We're taking care of that ourselves. And so, well, number one, is that what Susie's hired to do? Is she skilled in it? Well, she's just running a trip. She's just
what
be
could
there,
be so
get
hard?
people checked in.
Right.
And fortunately for me, a couple things went wrong. Like there was bad weather one day.
Exactly.
And people were getting in late. And the hotel got overbooked because the no-shows. And then they got in, there wasn't a room for them.
Oh, yeah.
And there were just things like on site that this gal from the company was not skilled in process of meeting and events and knowing things and how to do things in a precautionary manner. Another guy got hurt on the golf course.
Oh, wow.
Right? And they didn't know what to do. And I was telling this gentleman in our proposal, we have 2 people. And he goes, what do you need 2 people on a trip for with like 100 people? It's like overkill. And I'm going, Frank, because you want this, your job on the trip is to be out there being in the club, being with people. You don't want the worries of Brant and his wife didn't get in it, or they're at the airport, or somebody's not feeling well and has to go home, or this guy got hit and needs to go over here. And you need runners to do this. So you need a base person that's going to run everything. You need a contingency person for the variables and you know what? I hope we don't need the contingency person, but then this way you've got your bases covered and you can focus on the deliverable.
And I was thinking about one of the sales meetings back at Intel. And for those of you who work for me will remember this because it got out of hand one night.
Oh.
Okay. And somehow a golf cart ended up getting driven into the pool.
Into the pool.
Into the pool.
I was hoping you'd say a pond.
No, into the pool, right?
Yeah.
And so fortunately, they had a company, I don't remember who it was, that ran the whole trip and so forth and put all that logistics together. And that provided the insulation for them, right?
That you need.
Really important to do those kind of things.
Well, that's why we're not trying to. Yes, you can run these programs yourself.
Right.
But there's a mental part of putting the program together that we're discussing now.
Right.
Then there's a physical part of the program of delivering it. So that could be the goods, the gifts, the trips, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that's not what you guys were hired to do as sales leadership.
Yeah.
So in that budget, I would recommend you say, all right, maybe it's a short term and I can kind of get the data and manipulate it. I don't need a platform, but you might need a reliable source to get the goods out the door. And if you're doing a trip, have a third party be involved, or we can recommend some people to do the trip, because you don't want that mental exhaustion of all that after you've gone past the finish line.
Exactly.
You don't need that aggravation.
No.
And it can easily be budgeted for. The incremental gain will offset the cost of having the third party in to do that.
Right.
And again, back to you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
You've got a good deliverable on your platform, a good deliverable on your awards and your trip, then you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Yeah. I totally agree with that.
And you and I did that. When you ran your first program, I mean, I had a few under my belt by then.
Right.
And I was the guy telling you, John, look out for this. John, look out for that.
Right.
And you had a small group. We sent 2 people, but everything went off without a hitch. and you're back there. When are we going to do this again?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Jill and Nancy, who did that
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah.
they were not only helpful, but the thing that they brought to it. So again, I'm not making a pitch to bring in a third party or not. It's up to you. But I think the thing that I remember them is that they were on the spot and they knew what to look for and to
Agreed.
ask for.
Yeah.
So when we first got there, we had no intention of having an opportunity to sit down with the captain at the captain's table and to getting a tour of the whole bridge. Okay. And Nancy or Jill put that together at the last minute.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden tonight we're not eating at this table, we're at the captain's table, right? And before that we're doing this whole tour thing, which was very, very cool, exclusive. It was just us. And so I don't know how much of that could have been done in advance, but it was those sort of things, lining up a photographer at the last minute to take our picture, right? So okay, so then we talk about promoting and sustaining and so forth, and then we're to the pilot program, right? So tell us a little bit about pilots. Yeah.
Pretty self-explanatory. Goes under the banner of walk before you run.
How long do you run
before
one?
you walk? That's in correlation with what the master program should be.
Right.
But I think you usually need a minimum a month to run a pilot.
Okay.
And you try to take a subset of the audience and involve the audience and tell them why you're doing this.
Right.
You're doing this to learn. I mean, it's funny when I recommend this to people, they say, really? And I say, yeah, trust me, back to trusted advisor. So when you're running a pilot program, you want to be as inclusionary as you can with the people back at your home office and the people in the field.
Yeah.
Because you're bringing those two entities together to say, we're running this to debug it. And we need input from the top.
Great word.
Yeah, from the top down to the bottom up. We don't want to go, let's say ultimately the program's going to run against 500, dealers and contractors. And you're taking a subset of 25 in a certain region to try it. Well, back to and there's a psychological dynamic as well. Inclusionary, overused terms. The people at the home office all get their hand in the say in this. The people in the field get to contribute. Now, there should be some baseline of what the home office deliverables to say to the field, chew on this. How does it look? How does it smell? How does it taste? Well, you don't say this. You don't say, oh, good point. Thank you. Then they're measured. They're doing it. Things come up along the way.
Right.
And the end result into that is 45 days later, you'll already, if you've done it the right way, you already have the buy-in of those 25 guys that were involved in the pilot, and they can be your evangelist to the other, 300 people you're trying to get to, or whatever it is. And you learn so much from doing a pilot. And I hate to say it, you might do it and say, this just isn't going to work. Now that we've done this, maybe this is the best pilot we ever ran because it's not going to work.
Doesn't work in our environment.
Not the right place, not the right time. We were thinking of running it from dot to dot to dot to dot. We got to postpone this till Q1 of next year.
Yeah, didn't understand the costs.
Yeah,
all those kind of things. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Not, again, you can do the pilots on a narrowed down type of budget. You don't have to put so much investment in communications or platforms or those kinds of things.
Right.
But it's back to basic marketing. You always want to test run it before you go out and drive it for sure.
Yeah.
So pilots are important.
Makes a lot of sense. I think that was the note we had is be on the lookout for unintended consequences. Amen to that.
Can bite you in the you-know-where.
Yeah. And then reporting and monthly program end.
Well, back to communications, back to one thing you and the team need to be talking about is how are we going to measure ourselves? That measure correlates to some type of data you're taking in. That data is going to be put in a scorecard as something of what was my baseline? Where am I at now? Have I shown incremental gain? Have I shown incremental improvement here?
Yes.
And then any other variables along the way. And then to be timely too. I mean, we've all been discouraged where you're a guy in the field and you're busting your hump and let's say you go through a 90-day period and like it's say January, February, March, and it's like April 15th and it's like, well, what the hell's going on? It's like, where do I stand? And then it's April 30th. Well, what's going on? And then it's the middle of May and you're not hearing anything. And you start to get a little discouraged and whatever. And it's because the back end didn't think of, they needed more time to collect that data, put it together. Who's going to put it together? You need to be timely. with these things.
All the more reason to run a pilot.
Specific and timely, and make sure the measure comes out, that it's, again, attainable, reasonable, all those things we said earlier about smart, but that somebody owns that part of it too.
Yeah.
Because the measurement part of the program and collecting the data, that's got to be somebody in the team.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues I've run into, and I know this is shared across many organizations, is that they make the assumption that all of the data is inside of Salesforce.
No, it's not.
Right. And so then it's a question of, well, how do I get the information out of Salesforce into a spreadsheet? I'm like, okay, great, I can do that. And then how do I automate that so it's onto some kind of a portal that people can see, or an email that gets generated? Okay, I'm using Smart Sheets for that. Okay, I can do that. But then it goes back to, is the data inside of Salesforce actually reliable? And is that data, the financial data, tied into my financial system, right? And so you have all of these various pieces of IT that your IT team is already telling you, hey, I don't have time, and now I'm introducing a sales training or a sales contest into this.
Yeah.
So to me, that's why a pilot is so important, to lay out all of the kind of data that you want to report on, and where it's going to come from, and who's going to be responsible for extracting it.
Well, and I'll admit, if you look at a gap in me in my sales management style, data was kind of boring to me. I mean, I want to know the end line, but the means to get there, and the data and the metrics and all the extrapolation, all that stuff. It was like, let somebody else do that.
I don't know any salesperson that wants to do that.
I'm not saying that. Some people are really into the data and the numbers and analyzing all that.
Right.
But however, I'd like to put it in the Moneyball analogy. If the book, it's the baseball theme,
right?
Where this financial guru guy kind of shows up at the baseball team, and I think Brad Pitt's in the movie, the Billy Bean story, and it's just coming into play that Billy Bean is a manager thinking, most of baseball has been run on a gut feel. The coaches are ex-players, and they think Billy Joe's going to do this, but so this other guy, I forget his name, Noah or something, he comes in, he starts saying, I've been looking at the data, and Fox, when he's playing day games, he's going like 2, 3 for 4, but at night games he's like 1 for 4.
Right.
And if he's placing this kind of pitcher versus this kind of pitcher, he starts putting together this data, which the coach would never have thought to do.
Right.
So that theory of Moneyball and data, and again, a balance. I think it's a little bit of the gut feel, but a little bit of the data. It shouldn't be one totally the other.
Right.
The economics of that provided Oakland to accelerate their wins and actually get to the World Series, because he started managing in a Moneyball way of using data and human beings together to get to the end line.
Right.
And I only bring up that story because if you're not a data guy, it's an important part of the component.
It's really true.
And if you're not good at it, get somebody else to do it that thrives on it and brings that information, because the post of this is, at the end line of the program, you're going to need to look back at the data and prove that there was some type of improvement, and the analytics show you should repeat this again.
That's what you're aiming for.
Yeah, that's what you're aiming for.
Yeah. The last item is evaluation by management to celebrate the wins.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the data, when actually back to what we did when you were talking about the trip you earned. We always had and this is a component of Celebrate the Wins, we always had a customer eval of, let's say in that case, the trip, and this is just an example. Number one, I would line up the internal team that helped run the program and celebrate with them. Yahoo, we ran a darn good program. Don't leave them out of the equation. It's kind of like another sports analogy where leadership needs to be thinking this way. When the Bulls were winning, great back in Chicago, and they got the rings, who got the rings? Everybody.
Everybody.
In the building at the United Center got a ring.
Wow.
It was very inclusionary. They celebrated that championship.
Yeah.
All right. You know how they made those people feel who were fringe players, but they still got a ring for like thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's celebrate the win. the internal team. Then it's the input from the customer. If they felt, man, you guys ran a dynamite program. So like the travel coordinators on that trip, we gave them a little extra special recognition
nice.
because, you came back, and they don't think they're salespeople, but I'm the first to say, you go out, you help our client or with the trip or the platform, and we win that they want to do it again. You just made a sales contribution because we renewed that account. So,
Right.
celebrate there.
Yes.
And then you celebrate, with the company or the employees to tell them, the results that has occurred that moved the needle
Yeah.
and where the mission and the advance of the company need to come from. So
Yeah.
to me, you can't over celebrate,
Yeah.
but just make sure it's inclusionary, because if you have a president's club, and again, budget wise, you can't afford to send the sales assistants or the teams. But if John wins a trip and John comes back and he's talking to everybody about how great Tahiti was and all that, and what do you think his admin people are doing? Yeah, I did all the hard work, and
Right.
he wins the trip.
Yeah, in fact,
It's not going to be a
the
great.
end story with that is that so Intel had this great program, and it was the end of the year, but getting orders and design wins, which is what we were aiming for, when you're working in an environment like that where a customer is saying, I'm going to build around your particular product line, your chipset, if it was back then, didn't mean that the production orders started that time. They actually were out a couple of years later, right? So we were winning the first initial battles and taking the high ground, but there was a lot of civilization that had to be built, if you will. Think about that analogy. And so that year was actually a really poor economic year for the company. So we achieved this, but on the financial side, we couldn't. We didn't make it. And so what happened is we couldn't take everybody that had won.
Oh.
And so originally the idea was that all of the inside team, which was all the product managers and all of the sales team, were all supposed to go at the same time. So now we would have like 1,000 people going, okay, or whatever the total was. And they said, well, this was really a sales program from the beginning, and so all those inside people got a nothing, zero, nothing, right? That was not a good ending.
No.
Right? So there probably should have been some communication. And when you talk about budget, at the very, very beginning, they should have said, if all hell breaks loose and we still achieve, the money should have been
what
there.
ifs, contingencies,
Yes.
thinking about that, what's a bad outcome, what could happen. You can't solve it all the time.
Right.
But you're just trying to think about it. And the other thing, too, that we found about celebrating wins, and again, I bring the marketing team into this, is that's fodder for the next go-round. When you show the success stories, I mean, like you guys had a cruise and we took photos of different things that, in your excursions and things like that. So that becomes the allure of next year when you're promoting to the channel or whatever. Hey, on the X trip of this year, we did ABC cruise and we stopped at these islands. And then that's part of the communications for next year. And people, the visibility of that and the psyche of how that starts to train your brain. That was like a damn good trip.
Yeah, like I want to go on that.
And I get that for free if I just meet these measures here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can use it for that.
Yeah, great recruiting tool.
Yeah.
So as a wrap up, we talked about the who, which maybe you, and there were a couple of little warnings that you had. And the first one was, do you have 5 hours a week to run this program? So
I don't know if it's 5 hours a week. The thing
hour a day.
Yeah. Well, we've been pontificating here for a while in this course, and you can see of the framework of 10 things. Each one deserves a certain amount of time and a certain amount of attention.
Yep.
The heads up is the analogy. Pushing the snowball uphill. It's tough. Once it gets up there, you're pretty well okay on the on the other side of the mountain.
Right.
But go into it with the realization of it's going to take time, it's going to take energy. Back to what you and I talked about, and you've done this, I know, in the past, is treat it like a legitimate project. at the company. Some companies are good at project management, some companies are not so good.
Yeah.
But if you're confident that it can go through the same litmus test of project management, put it in that scheme, and then get stakeholders buy-in and key folks on your task force.
Right.
You don't need 22, but I could easily see that there's 4 on a team. And then, go ahead and implement from there. And then again, if you run the pilot, that's time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to earmark some time against this.
And then you said what other people and resources are available to you? That's part of the team,
Well,
right?
if you're the sales leader, it's pretty much who surrounds you now. If you're working with your CFO, you're working with marketing, you're working with assistants, you're working with IT. You may be not thinking of it, but it does touch almost every part of the company.
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree, maybe a little bit of human resources, because human resources are pretty good at, okay, I know we have a direct team and you're running a sales contest for the direct team, but there may be some state law or ordinance or something that the sales leader guy is not thinking of, that the HR guy would think, look out for this, look out for that.
Right.
And maybe they're just needed for a meeting or two and then they drop off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and we've both been with companies like this, you want buy-in from the company. It might be your idea as a sales leader and you brought it to the dance, but you want everybody dancing during the dance, and you don't want naysayers coming back to you as a sales leader and saying, well, John ran the program and he never asked me.
Exactly.
We know how this stuff occurs in companies. So as long as everybody gets a seat at the table at the beginning, maybe they don't have to stay for the whole meal, but at least they have their time to give their input.
Yeah.
That lends for a healthier outcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you talked about doing a cost analysis of outsourcing it. So, if you outsource, here's what to look for, those kind of things.
Yeah. You can find people like us. You can go to the internet. We've discussed the components you'll need. It's not 52, it's like 4. And like any other research, always go with trusted advisors, people a referral, somebody who's run a program before, has used somebody that, had the I's dotted and the T's crossed along the way. And maybe you can, in smaller companies, we've helped in just a consultative fashion to be the guide, to be the accountability person. I know sometimes in my life when I'm working with a sales leader, they have all the best intentions, but other sales variables come into their life. And they're supposed to meet on Thursday about the incentive trip with their task force, and they missed the meeting. They forgot it. Or they're just saying, I'm so busy and other stuff. But yet if we're there and say, hey, on Thursday at this 2 to 3:30, we're going to meet about the thing, and it's going to be Zoom this time, in person this time, then that third party is actually, in a nice way, nudging and holding sales leadership and the task force accountable for getting this stuff done. It all depends on how you like to operate as a sales guy. Me, I'm always the guy that I like to be coached. I like to be trained. I'm not afraid. I've got enough confidence in myself. But if I had a third party come in saying, hey there, hey there, that's going to make me better at the end of the day.
All right. Well, I think we've wrapped it up. Do you have any last comments?
No, but you had all those notes, and here's what John gave me to go by today. So.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for attending the course, and there's follow-up material and all sorts of things that we'll put in the comments for you. So,
and maybe as a bonus round, as we do these podcasts, webinars, whatever, we're probably going to go, duh, we didn't bring this up, we didn't bring that up. So maybe you and I can go back to reflect upon things and say, oh, we shoulda, coulda, oughta done it. And maybe do a soundbite or something like that. But I think in the recap mode it's a worthy endeavor. You're the leader. Again, the leader needs to lead. You need to bring things to management that they may not be thinking of. But you want to do it that you're on solid footing when you do it, because your reputation's on the line for this. And I've seen it go from the sales leader bringing it in to becoming a staple of the company, which is just great. That helps your personal career. And it's something that sales leadership myself, you have taken to other entities.
Right.
There's a story to tell there. When I was at ABC, we realized this gap. We put this behind it. Here's the results we got from
Right.
it. We know how to do it. We didn't stub our toe. That's another thing in your, toolkit
Right.
that becomes part of you being, if you wish to stay in sales or be sales leadership or move up the rank.
Right.
It's another thing in your arsenal too.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Well, anyway, thank you very
Yeah.
much.
thanks all. Happy selling.
Absolutely. Bye. To think beyond just a simple sales contest, you can actually change the shape and direction of your firm for many years to come.
The full scope of what's needed in my psychological income from working for you, plus my
Right.
physical income, what I need to survive.
Hmm.
That's the whole package. And I believe sales leadership needs to be purposeful about that.
If you're not purposeful in recognizing people, what we talked about, the emotional side, the brand, the culture in your business, you are likely to lose them.
Yeah.
At some point, money doesn't mean anything.